On the day of the school visit, as I walked down the hallway, Shelley noticed me. She flashed a brief smile and started to wave, but quickly stopped and lowered her hand, her expression turning serious. It seemed like she wanted to talk to me, her mother, but something inside held her back. We used to be so close, going shopping together, but recently, she's been locking herself away in her room and won't smile at me anymore. Still, seeing her getting along well with her classmates at school gave me some relief. After the homeroom session ended, I rushed over to her homeroom teacher as they walked out of the classroom. At home, I only know the Shelley who stays closed off, but I thought the homeroom teacher might have noticed some change in her feelings. I was afraid to hear her true feelings, but as her mother, committed to protecting and raising her, I knew this was a path I couldn't avoid. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but could I talk to you for a moment?" Shelley's mother. "This is perfect timing. I've been meaning to talk to you as well." The teacher glanced around, seemingly wary of others watching, then said, "Could you come with me for a moment?" She led me to the home economics room in a different building. "There's a reason I brought you here. The truth is about Shelley." As she pulled a knife from the shelf, the truth the teacher revealed about Shelley was far beyond anything I had imagined. "My name is Jada. I'm a 45-year-old nurse. I live with my husband Leo, who works at the local city office, and our daughter Shelley. On weekends, I love going grocery shopping with Shelley. It's the little things like that which make me happiest. We often chat about our favorite idols, or joke about comedians we like, and the familiar store clerks sometimes say, 'You two are always such a close pair.' Whenever they do, Shelley would beam and say, 'That's because Jade is the best.' And I'd reply, 'Shelley's my pride and joy too.' We're known in the neighborhood as the perfect mother-daughter pair, and I always hoped our relationship would continue this way. The truth is, there's no blood connection between me and Shelley. My husband Leo was previously married, and Shelley is his daughter from that marriage. But after living together for over 10 years under the same roof, I've come to see her as my own daughter. It's often said that when parents divorce, it's hard for a man to get custody of the child. The reason Leo was able to gain custody of Shelley was due to certain unusual circumstances. When she was very young, shortly after she was born, her birth mother reportedly yelled at her and even hit her repeatedly. I don't know all the details, but Shelley suffered deeply, not only physically but emotionally as well. It was only after a neighbor reported the situation to the police and child services that Leo, who had been prioritizing work, finally became aware of his daughter's plight. When I first met Leo, he was constantly lamenting his failures as a father. I focused too much on work, leaving the parenting to her. I'm just as responsible for what happened. I met them when Leo came to the hospital where I worked as a nurse. At first, our relationship was simply that of a nurse and a patient, but over time, through small talk, we began to be drawn to each other. Eventually, when we both started to think seriously about marriage, Leo told me about Shelley's past. When I first met her, she was only 3 years old, tightly clutching a teddy bear that Leo had given her as a birthday present. "Nice to meet you, Shelley," I said, reaching out for a handshake. But Shelley instinctively pulled her hand back. "Are you going to hit me?" she asked in a trembling voice. My heart sank at the sight of her. "No, of course not. Shelley, you're a good girl." "No one would ever had a good girl," I reassured her. Really, for real? You won't hit me or throw water on me." I hugged her trembling little body. "I'll protect you, Shelley," I whispered in her ear. As she buried her face in my chest and sobbed, I stroked her hair and silently swore to make her happy no matter what. "You can call me Jada, okay?" She still seemed a little wary of me. Given the pain she had endured from her birth mother, it was understandable. Even so, I wanted to spend as much time as possible with Shelley on my days off from work. At night, I would get into bed with her, reading her storybooks until she fell asleep. "Stop, no," Shelley's scared, so scared. Sometimes, she would wake up in the middle of the night, crying. perhaps reliving those traumatic experiences in her dreams. Despite being exhausted from work, I stayed by Shelley's side, helping her through those nights. I can't say for sure if my efforts made a difference, but gradually, Shelley started to open up to me. And eventually, she began speaking to me on her own. "Hey, Jada." Today, a friend from my class. By the time she entered elementary school, it seemed she had overcome some of the pain from her past, and she became a cheerful, carefree child with a constant smile. As a nurse, my schedule is inevitably irregular, but even when I wasn't home, or when I returned late, Shelley would take the initiative to cook dinner or help with the household chores. "And you know, Jada, you're off work next Sunday, right? I want to invite my friends and go to the amusement park." Shelley and I were so close that Leo started to feel a bit jealous. "Hey, Shelley, could you talk to Leo sometimes, too?" he asked, looking genuinely lonely, which made me laugh. Whenever Leo came near, Shelley would often stop talking abruptly. It might have been because she had reached that awkward age when girls have trouble accepting their fathers. "Don't worry about it. I'll listen to Shelley's stories for both of us," I teased back. I felt bad for Leo, but I was so happy that Shelley trusted me so deeply. However, about a month after Shelley started junior high school, she suddenly changed, as if she had lost all her energy. The shift from elementary to junior high school, and the drastic change in her surroundings likely played a part. Still, the fact that Shelley, who used to talk to me about even the smallest worries, had now become so quiet, made me incredibly anxious. She still helped with cooking, cleaning, and laundry, just as she always had. But the Shelley who used to laugh and tell me about her day at school seemed to have disappeared. She used to sit next to me and watch dramas together once her homework was done. Now, aside from dinner and bath time, she retreats to her room and locks the door. What's going on with her? Lately, even when she comes home from school, she doesn't say a word to me and just stays locked up in her room. "Something feels off," I said, unable to shake my concern. I turned to Leo after he got home from work. "You're overthinking it. It's probably just a phase," Leo said, brushing it off with a laugh as if it were someone else's problem. He didn't take my worries seriously. If Shelley was feeling anxious or troubled, I wanted to help her as a mother. I had promised Shelley and myself, from the moment we met, that I would make her happy no matter what. Yet here I was, unable to notice my daughter's pain, unable to help her, and it made me feel utterly powerless. "Shelley, could we talk for a bit?" I asked, standing in front of her room. There was no response. "I made a cake. I'm not sure if it turned out well. I've got some tea, too. Would you like to come out and eat together?" The door cracked open just slightly, and Shelley peeked out from the gap. "Come on, anything you want to talk about. Don't hesitate." She opened her mouth as if to speak, but quickly closed it again, averting her eyes. I didn't want to force the door open. I knew I needed to respect Shelley's wishes and wait for her to come to me when she was ready to talk. Suddenly, I noticed Leo standing behind me. Shelley let out a small gasp, almost like a yelp, before shutting the door tightly. "Leo, something's really wrong with Shelley. She's struggling with something. Don't worry so much. Anyway, if she doesn't want the cake, can I have it?" I wanted Leo to take my concerns more seriously, but it didn't seem like he would. Not knowing what else to do, I sighed deeply. Even when I came home from work, I no longer heard her cheerful, "Welcome back." How long had it been since I last saw her smile? I looked at the calendar, trying to remember the last time she had laughed. "This won't solve anything," I muttered to myself. "I need to focus on her who's here right now, and face her head on." I forced a smile, trying to encourage myself as I looked at my reflection in the mirror. But it was clear that I wasn't fooling anyone, not even myself, with that exhausted face staring back at me. Will the day ever come when we can face each other again, laughing about silly things like we used to? As these thoughts ran through my mind, my eyes unconsciously drifted toward the calendar again. A large red circle marked the end of May, with the word school written beside it. I suddenly remembered that the handout we received from the school earlier in October mentioned a class observation scheduled for that day. I opened the drawer and pulled out the handout to confirm. There was no mistake. Shelley's class observation was only 2 days away. I had been so caught up in worrying about my relationship with Shelley that I almost forgot about it. Facing the mirror once more, I gave myself a pep talk. If you don't stay strong, who will? If you don't toughen up, you won't be able to protect her. The truth was, I had only ever seen Shelley when she was at home, so I had no idea what she was like at school. Maybe her homeroom teacher had noticed some change in Shelley's mood. Luckily, class observation days had become more flexible, allowing parents to come at any time that suited their schedule. This was helpful for me since my work hours were irregular. At Shelley's school, the handout clearly stated in bold letters that parents were welcome to visit at any time on the designated day. I decided to go in the afternoon, deliberately avoiding the morning. If I wanted to have a proper conversation with her homeroom teacher, it would be easier for both of us after school, closer to the end of the day. Though I was nervous about hearing Shelley's true feelings, I had already made up my mind that, as her mother, this was something I couldn't avoid. On the day of the class observation, Shelley noticed me walking down the hallway. For a brief moment, she smiled and raised her hand to wave, but quickly dropped it and returned to a serious expression. It seemed like she wanted to talk to me, but something inside her was holding her back. Seeing Shelley like that filled me with an indescribable sense of unease. But once class began, she responded cheerfully when the homeroom teacher called on her, and she read her essay aloud with enthusiasm. She seemed to be getting along well with her classmates, even chatting so much at times that the teacher had to tell her to quiet down. Seeing that Shelley was doing fine at school, I felt a little more at ease. Even after the class ended, I stayed at the school, waiting for homeroom to finish. When the homeroom session was over and I saw her homeroom teacher come out of the classroom, I quickly approached. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but could we have a quick word?" Before I could finish, the teacher walked briskly over to me, saying, "Shelley's mother, I'm glad you're here. I've been meaning to talk to you, too." Glancing around nervously, the teacher lowered their voice. "Could you come with me for a moment?" I followed them as they led me to the home economics room in a separate building. It seemed like an unnecessarily distant and secluded place to have a private conversation, but there must have been a reason for choosing it. "There's a reason I brought you to the home economics room," the teacher said, their expression grave. Whatever they were about to tell me, it wasn't going to be good news. "Has anything changed at home with Shelley recently?" The abruptness of the question caught me off guard, and I didn't know how to respond. Just as the homeroom teacher mentioned, Shelley had indeed been withdrawn lately, and the cheerful light she once showed in front of me was now gone. And yet, I had been unable to support her through whatever troubles she was carrying deep inside. It was at this moment that I fully realized how inadequate I had been as a mother. While I struggled to find the right words, the homeroom teacher glanced around once more to ensure no one was nearby, then took a knife out of the storage room. "Actually, something strange happened to Shelley during the cooking class last month." The teacher began to explain what had occurred. Around the end of September, during a home economics class, the students were tasked with cooking. Since the homeroom teacher also served as the home economics teacher, they had pre-selected the ingredients, but allowed the students to cook whatever they wanted. At first, everyone began cooking happily, but a little while later, a commotion erupted from one of the groups. "What happened? Are you okay?" Concerned voices from Shelley's classmates could be heard. When the teacher approached, they found Shelley crouched down in the middle of the group, holding her head in her hands. Shelley, who had always been at the center of the class, making everyone laugh and bringing a cheerful energy, was now unrecognizable. The teacher was at a loss for words. Upon asking the other students what had happened, they explained that Shelley had been enjoying herself at first, preparing the ingredients with a smile. But when one of the students picked up a knife, she suddenly started trembling. Has Shelley had any experiences that might make her afraid of knives? The homeroom teacher asked carefully, choosing their words with caution. Hearing this, one thing immediately came to my mind. Before I met her, Shelley had been subjected to cruel treatment by her biological mother, Leo's ex-wife. Or so Leo had told me. There were times when the ex-wife even pointed the tip of a knife at her, hurling heartless words at her. But since I met Shelley, she had never once seemed scared of knives. In fact, she had even helped cook meals for us when I was too busy with work. And she had definitely used knives on occasion. She did have a difficult relationship with her biological mother. But for the past several years, there's been no sign of fear or anything like that, I explained, recounting Shelley's life with us after Leo and I got married. I couldn't understand why, after all this time, Shelley had suddenly developed a fear of knives. I know it's not really my place to delve into someone's private family matters, the homeroom teacher said, becoming even more cautious with their words and looking around nervously once more. I don't mind. Please, say whatever you need to, I responded. At this point, Shelley's emotional well-being was more important than any concerns about privacy. I think you may need to be cautious when it comes to her father, the homeroom teacher said, with a serious look in their eyes. What do you mean? Be cautious about Leo. Suddenly, bringing up Leo in this conversation completely threw me off. What on earth could have happened between Shelley and Leo? I tried asking Shelley what was wrong, the teacher continued. That's when, trembling, she started saying, "Dad, I'm sorry," over and over. She was crying, and it was like she was apologizing to her father, as if she was afraid of being scolded. The homeroom teacher's eyes welled up with tears as they recalled the scene. To think that she said something like that. I was speechless after hearing the truth from the homeroom teacher. As I walked out of the school gate, I suddenly heard a voice behind me. "Jada, wait." It was Shelley running after me. "Shelley, I thought you had already gone home. I saw you heading to the home economics room with the homeroom teacher." I couldn't think of what to say, and an awkward silence fell between us. "Are you enjoying school?" Unable to bear the silence any longer, I asked something safe. "Yes, it's fun. Everyone's really kind," Shelley replied. From the sound of her voice, it didn't seem like she was trying to avoid talking to me. "Shall we walk home together, like we used to?" With her usual bright smile. "Yay," Shelley nodded. On the way, we stopped by our usual grocery store to buy ingredients for dinner. "Could you help me with dinner tonight?" "Sure, but in return, let's make steak my favorite." As we divided the grocery bags between us and chatted about mundane things, I felt a deep sense of happiness just being able to have these simple conversations with Shelley. "Hey, Shelley. I had a little talk with the homeroom teacher earlier." Shelley, who had been walking just ahead of me, started to slow down. Shelley had always been a smart child, and it seemed like she already had an idea of where this conversation was headed. Still, maintaining her smile, "What did you talk about?" she asked in a quiet voice. "The homeroom teacher told me about what happened during the cooking class, how you were trembling when you saw the knife." "Oh, that, well." Her smile suddenly became stiff. It seemed like she was trying to keep up her usual cheerful expression, but her painful emotions were betraying her, slowing her steps. Eventually, she stopped altogether, turning to face me. "I can't take it anymore. I was so scared. I just want to forget it, but I keep remembering it." Tears started to roll down Shelley's cheeks, big and heavy. Before I could even ask what had happened, my body moved on its own, and I found myself holding Shelley tightly. "It's okay now, Shelley. I'm always on your side." Shelley clung to me with all her strength, like a little child, and continued crying for a while. We both forgot about the grocery bags that had fallen to the ground. I didn't ask her anything, and just waited patiently until Shelley calmed down on her own. After about 5 minutes, Shelley finally spoke in a heavy voice, still catching her breath. "You know, Jada, my dad told me I should never talk about this." But she had regained a bit of composure as she began to reveal what had been weighing on her. "It was back in May, after her elementary school graduation ceremony. That day, Shelley was supposed to spend the night at a friend's house for a graduation party, but she realized she had forgotten her stuffed bear, the one she always sleeps with, so she returned home to get it. At the time, I was at work, so the only person in the house should have been Leo. When Shelley got home, it was already dark outside, but strangely, no lights were on. She opened the door and noticed a pair of heels she'd never seen before. At the same time, the strong scent of perfume filled the air, and she could hear soft voices coming from my and Leo's bedroom. Although the rest of the house was dark, light was seeping through from under the bedroom door. Confused about what was happening, Shelley called out to Leo, assuming he'd already be home. At first, she thought Leo was just watching TV alone in the bedroom. When Leo heard Shelley's voice, he panicked and shouted, "Don't come in." But by then, it was too late. Shelley had already walked into the bedroom and saw something she wasn't supposed to. Leo was embracing a young woman and kissing her. Both Leo and the woman hurried to separate themselves. But even as a child, Shelley understood exactly what was going on. Shocked, Shelley forgot all about the stuffed bear and ran toward the door, wanting to escape. But just as she reached the entrance, Leo yelled behind her, "Wait, don't run." The moment she heard his voice, her body froze in place, unable to move. Dad's voice sounded just like Mom's back then. Leo grabbed a kitchen knife and approached Shelley, who was still rooted to the spot at the entrance. "If you tell Jada, you know what'll happen, don't you? I'll send you back to that woman." He pointed the knife at her as he spoke. The woman Leo referred to was Shelley's biological mother, the one who had tormented her in the past. "I felt so sorry for you, Jada. I couldn't forgive Leo for betraying you, but I was too scared to say anything. I'm sorry." As Shelley recalled the terrifying memory, her body tensed up again with fear. "It's okay, I'm here with you," I reassured her, holding her close, trying to prevent her from slipping back into that fear. Shelley had gone through traumatic experiences in her childhood, including having a knife pointed at her by her own mother. Leo knew that, and yet he had deliberately recreated that terrifying scenario just to intimidate her. What angered me more than the fact that I had been cheated on was that Leo had used the very thing that Shelley feared the most against her. "I will always protect you," I promised Shelley. As Shelley sobbed against my chest, I whispered into her ear over and over, "It's okay, I'll protect you no matter what." I was determined to gather all the evidence I needed to expose Leo's misdeeds. I would make sure Shelley never had to cry or suffer again. Once I returned home, I immediately started preparing for my counterattack against Leo. About 10 days later, it was a night like any other. I had just finished my shift and returned home. I was supposed to be on the night shift, but due to a colleague's schedule change, I had switched to a day shift. Of course, I had informed Leo via email, but with his feelings for me having cooled, I wasn't sure if he even bothered to read it. As I approached the front door, I sensed something strange. Normally, when night falls, the porch light would be on, but tonight, not only was the porch light off, the entire house was in complete darkness. Leo's car was in the garage, so someone had to be home. I opened the door and was immediately greeted by the strong scent of perfume and a pair of women's heels lying by the entrance. So this is the pair Shelley was talking about. As I had suspected, he had brought his mistress into our home, thinking I would be out. Clearly, Leo hadn't read my email, or maybe he didn't care enough to remember. Either way, the fact remained that he had betrayed me by bringing another woman into our home. There were only Leo's shoes and the mistress's heels by the door. Shelley's shoes were nowhere to be seen. Perhaps he had driven her away, treating her as a nuisance. I texted Shelley, just to be sure, and she immediately replied, "I'm at a friend's house, don't worry," with a cute emoji attached. The living room was dark, so it was obvious Leo and his mistress were probably enjoying themselves in our bedroom. The thought of him bringing another woman into the bed I sleep in, without me knowing, made my stomach turn with a wave of nausea. But for Shelley's sake, I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and quietly made my way to the bedroom. Who's in there? I threw the door open with force, and in the dim light, I saw them completely naked, wrapped around each other. You! What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at work, the mistress shrieked, pulling the sheets over her body, while Leo glared at me with fury. I'm on day shift today. The night shift was rescheduled due to a colleague's change. You're sneaky. You didn't tell me that. I sent you an email. You just didn't bother to read it. And as for sneaky, you're the one who brought your mistress into our bedroom while I was away. You're in no position to call anyone sneaky. His absurd accusation left me speechless for a moment. I reached into my bag and pulled out a divorce petition I had already filled out, thrusting it in front of Leo's face. I've been wondering when the right time would be to bring this up, but this seems like the perfect moment. I want a divorce. Divorce? That's a bit extreme, isn't it? This isn't just about your affair. What's truly unforgivable is how you treated Shelley, your own daughter. That's a misunderstanding. I don't know what Shelley told you, but I was just being strict with her because I love her. It's not something you should be so angry about. I decided to play my trump card in this divorce. I haven't told you, but I've installed security cameras all over the house. What? That's an invasion of privacy. Even between a husband and wife. There are things that are allowed, and things that aren't. This is my house too. What's the problem with installing cameras for security purposes in my own home? I shot back. He couldn't come up with a counter-argument, and pursed his lips in silence. Also, I'm taking full custody of Shelley. There's no way I'm leaving her with someone like you. Don't be ridiculous. She's my daughter. You're not even blood-related. There's no way that would be legally accepted. In that case, we'll settle this in court. And by the way, the cameras are excellent crystal clear footage and sound, too. It's been really helpful. He still seemed disgruntled, but without a valid argument. He hung his head in defeat. Eventually, my divorce from Leo was finalized, and I was granted full custody of Shelley. Leo fought hard to keep custody of her. But the security camera footage didn't just show his affair, it also recorded him repeatedly threatening Shelley. Even after I installed the cameras, Leo had continued to torment her regularly, like a monster. With Shelley's testimony aligning perfectly with the footage, Leo's feeble excuses were completely dismissed. Why was Leo so desperate to keep Shelley? I couldn't understand his feelings. Without me or Shelley around, he could have just been with his mistress in peace. And to my surprise, his mistress turned out to be a civil servant, working at the same city hall as Leo. Word of this incident quickly spread locally, and no doubt it reached their workplace as well. It was likely that both of them would lose their jobs. I was able to claim compensation from both Leo and his mistress in the divorce trial, and because of his repeated threats against her, the police became involved. After officially adopting Shelley, we moved into a new home. It wasn't as spacious as the old house, but it was more than enough for the two of us to live comfortably. And it was only a few minutes' walk from my parents' house. As a nurse with an irregular work schedule, having my parents nearby was a huge help. They had known Shelley since she was little and loved her like their own granddaughter. Right after my divorce from Leo, Shelley, worried about being a burden to me, awkwardly smiled and said, "I can live in a facility if it makes things easier." "Don't force a smile like that, it ruins your cute face," I said, pulling her into a tight hug. Children shouldn't worry about their parents. Remember what I promised? I'll protect you. But won't I make you unhappy, Jada? My happiness is mine to decide. If you're happy, that's all I need to be happy. You may not understand that just yet, but someday you will. I playfully tapped her nose with my finger, causing Shelley to pout. "Hey, stop treating me like a kid." Finally, she showed me the innocent, carefree smile I had been longing to see. "That's the smile I've been waiting for," I said. Shelley's genuine, unclouded smile. "From now on, let's be happy together, just the two of us. I don't ever want to be apart from you again. I won't let go." Saying that, Shelley hugged me tightly. On days when I don't have a night shift, Shelley and I make dinner together. Watching her smile brightly as she chops vegetables, I find myself stopping and thinking, I want to make this child happy. Maybe this feeling is what the world calls love. Jada, you've stopped again. Scolded by my daughter, I suddenly felt embarrassed for letting my mind wander.
You're really clueless, aren't you? The inheritance. The inheritance. Hand it over already, said Unity, my sister-in-law, barging in as soon as the front door was opened, happily talking at her own pace. Despite not being close, her sudden demand left me baffled. If it weren't for Blake, I wouldn't even want to come near such a gloomy place. Indeed, to Unity, adorned in flashy clothes and accessories, the home of her contrasting brother Blake and his daughter-in-law, me, must have seemed dreary. However, I thought Unity, who talked about the inheritance at the doorway without even looking at her late brother's portrait, was much more spiteful. This attitude of Unity's wasn't new. She boasted about her confidence in her appearance and often treated the gentle-natured Blake harshly. I had heard from him that once he began to advance in his career and earn a significant income, Unity changed her attitude and started cozying up to him. I was truly appalled by Unity's lack of compassion, barely visiting when Blake was repeatedly in and out of the hospital, and not crying at all during the funeral. I had decided to have nothing more to do with her, but greedy Unity wouldn't have it. We don't have all day. Hurry up. Bianca must be busy too, right? Unity, with eyes gleaming with anticipation, was convinced she was entitled to the inheritance. However, I possessed something that would utterly change that expression. It was the last words from my late husband. Read this, and you'll understand everything. I am Bianca, a widow in her mid-60s, living a modest life. I lost my beloved husband about a month ago, his long-standing illness having worsened. We met and married in our 40s, so we had no children. The loss felt overwhelming, having supported each other for 20 years. Was there any need to keep cooking for someone when there were no children? I considered following Blake, but embarrassingly lacked the courage. Furthermore, no matter what happens to me, live on without losing heart. Bianca, you're an independent and remarkable woman, Blake often told me. Ignoring his now final words was something I could not do. Life changed drastically after Blake passed away. I witnessed his last moments at the hospital in the middle of the night, then went straight to arrange the funeral, which proceeded smoothly. This time, being too overwhelmed to mourn or dwell on my thoughts about Blake was somewhat a relief. Many people, including my sister and her husband, encouraged me and helped prepare for the funeral, which helped me get through this month. I barely remember this period. Bianca, you did a commendable job as the chief mourner. Blake must be resting in peace in heaven, assured by your strength, my sister later told me. Though everything was new and I was constantly on edge, which led to a few days of illness, it wasn't all bad. More people attended the funeral than I had anticipated. Blake had worked at a renowned company and was a senior executive, so I expected many attendees I wouldn't know. However, colleagues from the company praised Blake's character, and some even shed tears. Among them were people who had traveled from overseas branches, sharing stories of going out for drinks with Blake during his business trips. It was regrettable that I couldn't spend ample time with each of them, but I made sure to note down everyone's names and addresses to send thank you notes and small tokens of appreciation later. My sister and her husband took care of these arrangements, allowing me some respite now. I'm endlessly grateful for Blake's gentle nature, which, I believe, made this possible. I want to boast about being blessed with such wonderful people, but lately, I've had doubts, primarily because of his sister, my sister-in-law, Unity. Despite being 12 years younger than Blake, Unity is still youthful compared to women her age. Her high sense of beauty made her somewhat of a celebrity in the neighborhood, and she is well aware of it, seemingly enjoying her days enhancing her beauty. I have no issue with that, though she's turning 58, and the appropriateness of wearing miniskirts is debatable. It's not for others to judge, so it doesn't bother me. The problem lies in her constantly making snide remarks towards me. I'm not as pretty as her, nor do I share her enthusiasm for yoga and spas. Bianca, you always look so dowdy. Aren't you embarrassed? Blake was wealthy. Why didn't he marry someone more beautiful? She'd say, evaluating what I wore as if appraising my worth whenever we met. What's with using an unknown brand bag at your age? And those shoes. How long have you been wearing them? You were wearing those the last time we met, right? It's easy for me to tell when someone lacks taste, even if their clothes are nice, because it shows in their accessories. Won't Blake buy you any? He doesn't desire material things, so if you asked, he would buy them for you, wouldn't he? I have enough bags and shoes, though not as many as her. Being called sloppy is one thing, but I've never been one to hoard items. In fact, I make it a point to discard at least one old item whenever I buy something new. So my home is rather clean. Whenever Blake asked me if I wanted anything for our anniversary or my birthday, I would plan a trip without hesitation. I've always believed that memories are invaluable and cannot be bought. Now that he is gone, I'm glad I made those choices. Unity would mock me indirectly with her remarks. Blake wasn't much to look at, so in that sense, you're well suited. But you must have married him for his money, right? No matter the insult, she always concludes with this. This is the issue I have with Unity's behavior. She spreads rumors among relatives that I married Blake for his money. Apparently, there were plenty of women who approached him with that intention. He wasn't one for gambling or nightlife. His hobby was mostly fishing. So I remember being surprised by the amount of his savings when we got married. However, I never intended to splurge his wealth. At that time, I had been working for 20 years at the same company and had my own savings, though not as much as him. Sharing similar values about not spending excessively was one reason we got married, not because I was after Blake's money, as Unity claims. I've tried explaining this to her and asking her to correct this misunderstanding with our relatives, but she never listens. It seems she's decided we're incompatible and constantly finds fault with me. Seh has always been fiercely competitive, and Blake, during his lifetime, tried to avoid her as much as possible. This might be why she barely helped with Blake's funeral arrangements. Indeed, I was the chief mourner, but whenever Blake fell ill or was hospitalized, she would never offer words of concern, no matter how often I contacted her. On the contrary, there was a time when she got angry and said, "Don't contact me about every little thing." After that, I internally decided not to inform Blake about anything that happened. However, thinking that letting Blake know could affect his condition, I would lie gently in front of him, saying, "Unity was worried about you." In the end, she never showed herself to Blake before he passed away, so even at the wake, she maintained an attitude as if she was there out of obligation, almost as though it was someone else's problem. Yet, ever since she heard Blake was ill, she hardly had an appetite and cried so much she couldn't cry anymore. Maybe that's why she looks so down now. She said she couldn't visit the hospital because she didn't want to see Blake in a weakened state, the relatives whispered. Hearing this, I was overwhelmed with an indescribable frustration, and compounded by the shock of losing Blake, tears began to blur my vision. Unity, spoken of as a tragic heroine, had skin too radiant for someone who supposedly lost their appetite, and naturally, there were no tear stains or signs of swollen eyes. Despite telling me not to contact her, she seemed humble in front of the relatives. If my sister hadn't been there to sense my feelings and tactfully lead me away, I might have lost my composure and shouted something at the relatives. Knowing Unity could not even show respect for the deceased, I resolved to have nothing to do with her going forward. After the funeral, I gradually sorted through Blake's belongings, balancing work and household duties, and at the same time started to regain my composure. At first, each item of Blake's that disappeared felt like erasing a memory, but I reminded myself that the memories with Blake were held most dearly in my heart. I cherished the time spent with those who attended the funeral, slowly reclaiming my tranquil life. Then, predictably, it was Unity who disrupted these peaceful days. She rang the doorbell and knocked repeatedly. "Bianca, you're there, aren't you? Your sister has come all this way, so open up," she called out, though I never considered her my sister. Unity raised her voice as if to perform for the neighbors. With laundry hanging outside, playing dead wasn't an option. "What were you doing?" "I was about to get sunburnt waiting," she said the moment I unlocked the door, barging in without hesitation, thrusting a bag from a well-known foreign brand into my hands and beginning to remove her shoes. "What's this all about?" I managed to ask, to which she dramatically sighed. "I've been so busy and couldn't visit, thinking you might be feeling down all by yourself. So, I brought something nice," she said, retrieving the bag she'd handed me to reveal its contents while standing. Accessories, perfume, and high-end baked goods similar to those Unity usually enjoyed, none of which seemed fitting for me. Did she really think I would be delighted to receive these? Moreover, her behavior today was unusually gentle. "I may have been harsh on you before, but you were the woman my only brother chose. I didn't want to hand him over to a gold digger. But seeing you at the funeral made me realize you're different. Only someone who truly loved Blake could shed so many tears and give a speech with disheveled hair, disregarding what others think. It seems she's not used to praising people. Even when she tries to appease me, she can't help but comment on my appearance or actions. However, the way she looked at me carried a sort of passion, as if she was in the presence of someone she respected. Unity's overtly changed demeanor only left me utterly bewildered as she continued to shower me with what seemed like compliments, despite my growing discomfort from not knowing what she truly thought. "I'm sorry. I still haven't settled the estate affairs. It's not in a state for visitors right now," I conveyed gently. Her eyes narrowed, returning to her usual cold gaze. "Do you really think I came all this way just to see your annoying faces?" she shouted. "It's about the inheritance, obviously. You shouldn't have to be told that." "What?" Confused by her gesture, indicating I should hand something over, I was at a loss. "How long do you think I've been waiting?" "I have a pretty good idea of how much Blake earned, so I know roughly how much I should be getting from the inheritance. It's pointless for you to try to keep it all. Hand it over now. If you're thinking of deceiving me, I'll call a lawyer and the police. The division of property is being handled by a lawyer, so there's no deception involved. Don't play dumb. I'm entitled to a share of the inheritance, aren't I?" she yelled, her face turning red. Given that Blake and Unity were siblings, it would be natural for Unity to have a share. However, Blake often spoke about this issue, expressing his concern. Unity, known for her beauty, alongside their parents who favored her, had bullied Blake since childhood for his looks. To prove them wrong, Blake excelled academically, attended a national university through scholarships and part-time jobs, and eventually climbed the corporate ladder in a major company. The only times Blake spoke of himself were about overcoming those dark times. Naturally, anyone would be troubled at the thought of such a person receiving an inheritance. When Blake confided in me about this dilemma, I urged him to decide for himself. I only learned of Blake's decision after his passing. Unaware of this, her demeanor shifted dramatically, railing against me. For a daughter-in-law to almost take the entire inheritance, you're just as greedy for money. I always suspected something fishy about you marrying that plain man after 40. The only reason to spend a lifetime with someone who has no merit but his wealth. I listened patiently to your talk of love, values, and all that. Just give me half of your share right now, and I'll disappear. It appears the sweet words and gifts were just a ploy to wrest his inheritance from me. Having been a target of her animosity for so long, I had anticipated there might be ulterior motives behind her sudden change of behavior. Witnessing her brazenly shout in the entryway, I realized just how lacking her sense of morality was. I wondered what Blake, peacefully listening from heaven, would think of all this. I told Unity to wait there for a moment, intending to show her a particular document. Upon hearing this, Unity's eyes sparkled instantly. You really understand me. Let's go eat some delicious French cuisine with that money next time. And she blurted out something nonsensical. Not wanting to be swept up in Unity's pace, I retrieved the document from the back room without agreeing to her plans and handed it to her. Please, this is from Blake. You can have it, I said as I gave her the document, Blake's last letter, essentially his will. Unity, sensing what it was, quickly opened it. Her eyebrows, meticulously shaped, moved up and down, clearly agitated by the letter's contents. What does this mean? I don't understand this. Her ignorance stemmed from her own choice not to see Blake. The words almost reached my lips, but seeing Unity collapse weakly into a seat, I doubted they would reach her now. The will stated that Blake bequeathed all his possessions to me as a final gesture of appreciation for a life shared in mutual support and love, leaving a passionately written message too private to read aloud. Reading this, I felt a renewed warmth for Blake, who thought of me even while battling his illness, making it clear Unity would receive not a cent. Despite the clear answer, Unity, unable or unwilling to accept reality. What does this mean? She murmured. Her face paled, and no response came from her as I half forced her out and quickly locked the door. Through the door's glass, I faintly saw Unity's shadow sway and stagger away. Feeling relieved that she wouldn't bother me again after reading the will was short-lived, the next afternoon, Unity called. I never thought you could be such a villain, Bianca. How dare you deceive me? Her fury was palpable even over the phone, sending a chill down my spine. But I had done nothing wrong, nor did I deserve to be slandered as a villain by her. I was about to respond with renewed determination, but she cut me off. You're probably feeling pretty good about knocking me down, aren't you? But sadly for you, you're about to experience real pain. This is your punishment for angering me. Don't think apologizing now will make me forgive you. I could vaguely understand she was talking about the inheritance, but I had no idea what she meant by me feeling pain or apologizing. Confused and silent, perhaps she thought my silence was hesitation, as she began to laugh loudly. See, it's too late for apologies. I'd love to visit you right now, but I have an appointment with my lawyer, so I'm busy. Her triumphant statement made no sense to me. Why she needed a lawyer or why she felt the need to inform me about it was beyond me. Instead of bothering with me, she could have gone to her usual yoga or spa sessions, I thought idly, only to be interrupted by her yelling. Don't you understand the situation? Talking to you is just frustrating, a real beauty killer. I'm not satisfied with the division of the estate and am preparing to sue over it. Whether you schemed in secret with your husband or not, it's inconceivable for a daughter-in-law to take everything. It's against the law. Thinking showing me Blake's will would silence me was a big mistake. To think you'd exploit a sick Blake for your gain, you have no conscience. I have a right to the inheritance, and I intend to claim it. It seems she was under the impression I was hoarding the inheritance by manipulating Blake to write the will in my favor, which finally broke my silence. It would be a waste of your time to go. The will was directly handed to a lawyer by Blake himself. I only read it afterwards, so there was no trickery involved. Plus, I've been informed by the lawyer that you have no claim to the inheritance. So, I think it's best if you didn't bother, as you're unlikely to be taken seriously. My calm response only angered her further, her voice growing louder. What's with that attitude? You won't be able to act so smug for long. Just wait. I'm serious. I've been calling repeatedly since yesterday and finally got an appointment. The lawyer understood my determination. Surely they'll be on my side and manage to get compensation from you. Just you wait. With those words, reminiscent of a cartoon villain, she hung up. Why she called when she wouldn't listen to anything I said was beyond me. Perhaps she thought the mention of a lawyer would rattle me, enjoying the thought of my unease. Far from reflecting on not receiving a cent from her own brother, she seemed rather invigorated by her resolve to take what she believed was hers by any means necessary. Months passed without incident, and I managed to sort through Blake's study, which had been cluttered with various items. In parallel, I gradually packed up, leaving the house filled with memories of Blake and me. Blake had always wanted to retire to a quiet house in the suburbs, and I decided to fulfill that wish. Selling the house and land we lived in, I moved to an area where my sister and her husband lived, using the proceeds as a down payment. While it's regrettable we couldn't do it while Blake was alive, our dog Max, who had been with us for over 10 years, seemed to enjoy the new home. Letting go of the house meant I had far fewer belongings, but the thought of gradually making the new place comfortable brought me some hope for the future. Yet, the strange feeling of Blake's absence persisted, and the lack of furniture only seemed to amplify the loneliness. Especially when Max was sleeping, I found myself lost in thought more often than not, knowing it wasn't particularly healthy. As if interrupting my days, my smartphone suddenly blared one day. Half asleep and without checking, I answered during a TV show. "You're trying to ruin me, you curse." It was Unity, screaming without any preamble, which instantly woke me up, though it was still unclear what she was ranting about this time. Sensing my silence, Unity didn't wait for a response before continuing. "It's your fault I'm getting divorced. The inheritance didn't come through because of you." What? My surprised response was more out of formality. I had guessed the situation. Likely, Unity had told her husband she would receive a portion of Blake's estate, and their relationship soured when that didn't happen, a fragile marriage, to say the least. Blaming their issues on me was hardly fair. Don't just stay quiet, apologize. Your fault. I can't live properly now. What am I supposed to do all alone? Why don't you work? You're still young in your 50s, I retorted, causing Unity to fall silent. Whether irritated by the suggestion to work or caught off guard by the mention of her age, Unity needed to face reality eventually. If you were living on your husband's salary, you shouldn't need the inheritance, right? Why did it lead to divorce? My husband was after Blake's estate from the start. If Blake's inheritance wasn't coming through, then he had no further use for me. Despite having spent decades together, he claimed all was ruined because of me, a woman whose only assets he saw were her looks and money. He even said he wanted his time back, expressing his anger dramatically. Why should I be the one to get yelled at? My husband is a pitiful man with a low salary. I'm the one who wants my time back. I had only met her husband at family meetings and then yearly at Christmas gatherings. Like Unity, he had a flashy impression, fond of brand name clothes, accessories, and luxury cars. Given her mention of his low salary, it's likely they both had been eyeing Blake's wealth for some time, probably spending recklessly without any savings. Having lived lavishly on her husband's dime, Unity wasn't in a position to make claims. Marrying someone for their money and then squandering it was their own fault. Even after consulting with a lawyer, I was turned away, told I had no claim to any inheritance. Everyone's making a fool of me. But you're the one I can't forgive. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. Despite my warnings, she went to the lawyer, only to face the embarrassment I predicted. Bianca, you must have brainwashed my husband, right? He said he should have married someone like you. Why does he mention your name? You must have seduced him behind my back. That's the only explanation. Why would you think that? I don't even have his contact information. Lies. He's never praised a dowdy middle-aged woman before. You must have seduced him and had an affair. Confess, and if you give me the inheritance, I might forgive you. This is nonsensical. Frustrated by her baseless accusations, I ended the call. The house was already being demolished, and the land was sold, so she couldn't come after me there. I hadn't given her my new address, making future encounters nearly impossible. Just to be sure, I blocked her number, determined to live peacefully. Half a year passed, and Max adapted well to our new life. My sister and I went out to eat once or twice a month, enjoying our days. My recent health checkup showed no issues, and the local shops provided convenience, leaving little to worry about except for that phone call a few months back. Unity, having divorced and depleted her savings, apparently sought welfare support at the social welfare office. During her visit, she was told that if she had relatives who could support her, she would not be eligible for assistance. The relatives who once praised Unity all refused to help with her living expenses, likely aware of her history of lavish spending. This led to her being isolated from her relatives. A caseworker then contacted me, but of course, I had no intention of helping. Considering how she and her ex-husband had approached us with financial motives and her disrespectful behavior, even at the funeral, I felt no obligation to assist her now. Despite her accusations of me being money-minded, it was Unity who had succumbed to her own greed. I'm unaware of her current situation. Rumors suggest she quickly lost a job she had found due to conflicts, or that her neighbors noticed her ex-husband's absence, deducing their divorce and her subsequent move. No one seems to know where or how Unity is living now, and I've lost interest over time. Regaining my peace of mind, I cherished my time with Max more than ever. Max, who was always gentle like Blake, became even quieter with age, which worried me. My sister, a longtime dog lover who adored Max, surprisingly acquired a puppy one day. Excited, I visited my sister's family, greeted by a small Shiba Inu. Max, immediately taken by the puppy, watched it play joyously. I hoped the puppy would become a good friend for Max, smiling at the heartwarming scene.
It was my husband William's birthday party, and we were spending the day together with our son's family. Our grandson Adam brought out a rolled-up sheet of drawing paper as a present. "Happy birthday, Grandpa!" William received it, saying, "Thank you." He absolutely adores Adam. The drawings he receives from Adam are always framed and displayed throughout our house. On this special birthday, a present from Adam would be particularly meaningful for William. I was excited to see how overjoyed he would look. With a loving smile, William slowly and carefully unrolled the drawing. However, the moment he saw the contents of the gift, he crumpled it up. Then, he threw it aside. "Hey, what are you doing?" I hurriedly picked it up and smoothed out the crumpled drawing. Upon closer inspection, it appeared to be a portrait of him. "What do you think you're doing, William?" Adam must have put so much effort into drawing it, and I couldn't believe William would treat it like this. I lashed out in anger. He should have known that Adam drew it thinking of him, so why would he do such a thing? However, William remained silent, staring intently at me. "Can't you see?" As he said that, he grabbed the hem of Adam's shirt and lifted it up on the spot. "My name is Natalie. I'm a 55-year-old housewife. I met my husband, William, through a friend's introduction and retied the knot after about 2 years of dating. We've been walking together for nearly 30 years since then. William has a serious personality, but at the same time, he has a childlike side. Like a big kid, he laughs a lot, eats heartily, and scolds properly when he needs to. His charm hasn't changed even now." As I pulled out an old album and flipped through it, a photo from when our son was born caught my eye. Gazing at the picture of our newborn son, I recalled William's words from that day. "Let's name him Stephen." On the day our son was born, he said that while looking at the sleeping baby nestled beside me. "I've been thinking about it for a long time. Since I can't give birth to our child myself, I wanted to at least put all my effort into choosing a name." I love that earnest side of him. As I turned the page of the album, there was a photo of me with my art class students. I decided to quit my job and become a full-time housewife when I got pregnant with our firstborn, Stephen. However, I found it challenging to adjust to the leisurely pace of staying at home. Despite being pregnant, I took up a part-time job as an art instructor. Once a week, I taught a small class of 5 to 6 students at a nearby community center, guiding them through various art projects. I had always enjoyed painting as a hobby, dedicating my free time on weekends to creating art. After giving birth, I transformed a spare room in our house into a private art studio. This room became a special space, filled with art supplies and mannequins for still life drawings. "Remember when Stephen was just a baby and he got so startled by the drawing mannequin that he burst into tears?" I reminisced with a smile, looking back on my son's childhood memories. There was the beaming grin on his face when he won first place in the elementary school race. The tense, stiff expression he wore at his middle school entrance ceremony, nervousness written all over his face. The joy radiating from him as he slipped on the uniform of his dream high school after acing the entrance exams. The tears of frustration streaming down his cheeks after losing a crucial game with his school club. the determined, hopeful look in his eyes as he set off for college, ready to embark on a new chapter. And then there was the wedding photo from just 5 years ago, capturing a moment of pure bliss. He walked alongside his bride, Emily, both of them wearing the biggest smiles I had ever seen. Emily looked stunning with her chestnut hair adorned by a lovely tiara, her happiness mirroring Stephen's as they strode together. Both William and I thought they made a wonderful couple, and the entire family showered them with heartfelt congratulations. As it turned out, Emily had fallen head over heels for Stephen at first sight and boldly made the first move, kick-starting their romance. When Stephen introduced her to the family, it became clear that Emily was a woman passionate about sports and health. "Did you know Emily used to play soccer in college?" Stephen mentioned. "Really? That's surprising," I responded. "People often tell me they wouldn't have guessed I was into sports," Emily laughed. "So you're a soccer enthusiast?" I inquired. The conversation flowed effortlessly as they discussed Emily's favorite teams and the positions she played. While I didn't know much about soccer, William eagerly joined in, bonding with his new DIL over their shared interest. Stephen and I could only listen in from the sidelines, struggling to keep up with their lively exchange. Before long, Emily and Stephen welcomed a baby boy into the world. The album contained a precious photo of newborn Adam, swaddled in a blanket, fast asleep. William and I were overjoyed at the arrival of our first grandchild. After much discussion, Stephen and Emily decided to buy a house, moving out of their rented apartment to establish their own family home. The first time William and I got to meet Adam in person was when we visited Stephen and Emily's newly built home. Until then, we had only seen our grandson's face through video calls, but being in his presence made his cuteness even more extraordinary. William was completely enamored with his grandson, playing with him with an enthusiasm I had never seen before. He must have been overjoyed. "You're so adorable, Adam." "It's Grandpa." William made funny faces and stuck out his tongue, eliciting gleeful laughter from Adam. "I didn't know William was so good with kids." I didn't miss the slightly wary look Emily gave him. Once Adam started attending preschool, Emily returned to work. Stephen and Emily's house was about an hour's drive from our place. On days when preschool was closed, the working couple would drop Adam off with us. "I'm really sorry for always imposing on you like this," Emily said apologetically, looking impeccable in her tailored suit and flawless business makeup. "Don't worry about it. William is more than happy to take care of Adam." "Adam, welcome. What do you want to play today?" "Come on out, Adam. Grandpa's here to play with you. Don't hide behind your mom." At first, Adam was shy and clung to Emily, hiding behind her. But as he played with William, perhaps drawn to his playful spirit, he gradually opened up. He explored every corner of the house, curiosity leading him from room to room. Taking advantage of a moment when William's attention was elsewhere, Adam wandered into my art studio. It happened to be a day when my students were coming, and they were just starting to gather. "Oh, Adam, what brings you here?" "Weird face," Adam said, pointing at me. I was taken aback for a second before realizing he was actually pointing at the mannequin I used for sketching. "Ah, you mean this." Surrounded by the arriving students, Adam's shyness returned, and he hurried out of the room. "Your grandson is so cute, Natalie." My students teased good-naturedly as they settled in to paint still life that day. As I was cleaning up after the lesson, he appeared again. He peeked out shyly from behind the door, watching me intently. "What's the matter?" I asked, and Adam replied bashfully. I wanted to see that weird face again. He seemed to be referring to the sketching mannequin from earlier. I took the mannequin down from the shelf and brought it to Adam's eye level. He touched it with curiosity and let out a wow in amazement. Then, he pulled out a sketchbook and a pen he had brought with him and started drawing something with intense focus. It vaguely resembled the sketching mannequin. Could it be? Adam, do you like drawing? Yeah. I love it. Adam mumbled, completely absorbed in his artwork. From then on, whenever he came over, he spent most of his time in the art studio. Of course, William felt a little lonely. He loved playing with Adam, but he wasn't particularly interested in drawing. It's wonderful to have something you're passionate about. Who knows, maybe you'll become a famous artist in the future, William said as he framed his drawings and put them on display. Adam kept sketching the mannequin until he got bored of it. None of my students showed as much dedication to their art as he did. Adam, how about using this color here? I suggested, and he eagerly filled in the area with the crayon. When a vivid depiction of the mannequin emerged, even Adam himself was surprised, his eyes shining with excitement. We were having a great time, but Emily was not happy about the situation. Adam, did you get your hands dirty with crayons again? It's even on your clothes. Emily would inevitably yell when she came to pick him up. Don't get so angry. It's washable crayons, so it'll come right off. How does this happen under your supervision? Please keep a better eye on him. Emily's anger stemmed from more than just the mess. As a soccer enthusiast, she wanted him to play soccer too. That's why she didn't like me teaching him how to draw. He's always drawing at home too. It's because you keep teaching him, Natalie. Emily, that's not true. This is his individuality. No, it's your fault, Natalie. That's why he's not doing well in soccer practice. Fuming, she took Adam's hand and left. She had been sending him to soccer club twice a week. Recently, he apparently didn't perform as well as expected in a shooting practice test. Emily seemed to be under the misapprehension that his sluggish performance in soccer was my fault. Everyone has their own unique talents and strengths. Emily had a knack for soccer, while Adam had a gift for drawing. Those individual qualities should be respected, but it appeared that his talents weren't being acknowledged. It's a tough situation. Don't worry, she will come around and understand eventually. William reassured, but Emily's insistence on pushing Adam into soccer only escalated. One rainy day when Adam came over, he looked tired and sleepy. Usually, he was full of energy, so I asked him what was wrong. I'm tired from the strength training. Strength training? Apparently, on top of soccer club practice, Emily had instructed him to do extra training at home. Even when I say I don't want to, she won't let me stop. So you're only doing it because you have to. No wonder your performance isn't improving. Adam nodded weakly. I decided to inform Stephen about this. He was surprised and said, "What? Emily told me Adam was doing extra practice because he likes soccer." After that phone call, Stephen began to observe Emily's behavior more closely. She wasn't scolding Adam and forcing him to do strength training. However, he noticed that she was using a stern tone to make him do the extra practice. Come on, hurry up. 20 sit-ups and 20 push-ups each. Stephen saw Adam making a face, struggling to endure it. Emily, isn't it enough that he's doing it at the club? He doesn't need to do strength training at home too. When he pointed this out, Emily raised her voice. Consistency is key for this kind of thing. But he looks like he's really suffering. Of course, strength training isn't easy. You're an amateur, so don't interfere. Faced with her stubborn anger, Stephen was at a loss. He tried to bring it up again later, but this time she completely ignored him. As this pattern continued, Stephen finally came to me for help. I don't think it'll make a difference if I say something, but... Despite my doubts, I told Emily to stop forcing Adam to do strength training. Natalie, stay out of this, please. Emily snapped, and from then on, she stubbornly ignored anything I said. She seemed to despise me even more, and from then on, she stopped dropping Adam off at our house altogether. On days when Stephen and Emily were at work and preschool was closed, he was apparently left alone at home. Leaving a 5-year-old child unsupervised was considered dangerous. Stephen shared this concern and had tried to reason with Emily. Hey, Emily. Don't you think it's better to have someone watch him on days like this? You mean leave him with Natalie? You've got to be kidding me. She stubbornly refused to agree. However, Stephen must have been worried sick. He came to me for my opinion as well. It is indeed worrisome to have Adam staying home alone. When I concurred, Stephen was delighted to have his thoughts validated and happily said, Right? So, is it okay if I leave Adam with you, without telling Emily? We don't mind, but... Keeping Adam's visits a secret from Emily would create a rift of secrecy between the couple. The thought didn't sit well with me. However, the joy of seeing my grandson overpowered my concerns, and I forgot all about it while drawing pictures with him. One sunny Saturday, as I was sketching with Adam, I received a call from Emily. Adam's there with you, isn't he? What? I couldn't hide my surprise. How did Emily find out? I've noticed Stephen acting strange lately, so I checked his phone. At first, she suspected he might be cheating, but that wasn't the case. I found the messages with you, Natalie. Something about leaving Adam with you. It's because it's dangerous to leave Adam alone. I tried desperately to explain, but Emily wouldn't listen at all. I'll give Stephen an earful when he gets home. Don't interfere with our family anymore. Emily abruptly hung up, leaving me feeling upset and unsettled. I never imagined I'd have a falling out with my son's wife over something like this. How long would this situation persist? It felt like wandering through a maze with no exit in sight. Even though Stephen faced Emily's wrath after that, he still brought Adam to our house. I finally understand. Adam prefers drawing over soccer. A resolute light shone in his eyes, determined to protect what truly mattered. Seeing his determination, I felt a surge of courage in my own heart. I resolved to focus on nurturing Adam's individuality. I found myself able to think that way. A few months passed, and when the plum blossoms were in bloom, William's birthday arrived. On this day, we always filled the table with William's favorite dishes and invited Stephen's family over to celebrate. It's a bit lonely with just the two of us, don't you think? It's better to have a big group. At the appointed time, Stephen and his family arrived, and the party began. As we chatted about recent events and enjoyed the delicious food, I noticed Adam's unusual behavior. He seemed restless, hiding what looked like a sheet of drawing paper behind his back. Adam, you brought a present for Grandpa today, right? Emily said with a smile, encouraging Adam. Come on, be brave and give it to him. However, Adam appeared embarrassed and kept his head down. William gently spoke to him, trying to help him out. Did you draw something? Can you show Grandpa? Adam pulled out the rolled-up drawing paper and presented it. Happy birthday, Grandpa, William said. Thank you, as he accepted the gift. With a loving smile, he slowly and carefully unrolled it. A present from his beloved Adam should be extra special for William. I was curious to see what was drawn and tried to peek, but at that moment, the instant William saw the picture, he crumpled it up. Then, with trembling hands, he crumpled it further and threw it away. "Hey, what are you doing?" I hurriedly picked it up and smoothed out the crumpled drawing. Upon closer inspection, it appeared to be a portrait of William. "What are you doing?" "Apologize." Adam must have put his heart into drawing it, so how could William treat it like this? I lashed out in anger. Adam had surely drawn it thinking of William, so why? William remained unperturbed and stared intently at me. He had a habit of staring at people like that when he was quietly angry. "Can't you see?" Saying that, William grabbed the hem of Adam's shirt and lifted it up on the spot. "Whoa!" Adam was startled and nearly lost his balance, but managed to steady himself. Beneath the lifted shirt, several small bruises were visible. "What is this?" I looked at William. He pointed his chin at the drawing paper, his eyes urging me to take a closer look. A portrait of William was sketched on the paper. However, upon closer inspection, the positions of his moles and the shape of his nose were slightly off. There were also blue spots on the body part below the portrait. Moreover, in the corner of the paper, the words "Help me" were written in small letters. I had a sinking feeling. Could these blue spots represent bruises on his body? Was the person in the portrait doing something to him? As these thoughts crossed my mind, I glanced at William and he nodded deeply. It seemed we were thinking the same thing. Someone was harming Adam. William had sensed the danger to his beloved Adam and crumpled the drawing in anger. How could this be happening? As William trembled with rage, Stephen asked in a puzzled tone. "Dad, Mom? What's going on?" Stephen also came over to Adam and gasped at his painful appearance. "Adam? How did you get those bruises?" I must have turned pale. With a sinking feeling, I showed Adam's drawing to Stephen. He was shocked too. "This drawing isn't Dad," he exclaimed. "What's the meaning of this? Tell us the truth." Adam burst into tears, startled by the commotion. Seeing this, Emily rushed over and hugged Adam protectively, saying, "Stop it! Those bruises are from soccer practice. Mommy is a liar." For the first time, he rejected Emily and pulled away from her arms. "You and the coach bullied me." Stephen, William, and I were all confused. "I don't even know the person in the portrait. Mommy made me draw it." After saying this in one breath, Adam started crying again, wailing loudly. Emily, looking flustered, stammered, "Well, you see." While all this was happening, Adam revealed everything, bit by bit. Emily had instructed him to draw a portrait of Grandpa for the birthday party. However, the person in the photo she showed him was an unfamiliar man. When he refused, saying he didn't want to draw it, she insisted that he draw that man's portrait. He was told that this was his new grandpa and was ordered to give the drawing to William at today's birthday party. After hearing everything, the gazes of William, Stephen, and myself all converged on Emily at once. Everyone's eyes were demanding an explanation, asking what was going on. When Emily realized that everyone there was on Adam's side, she sighed in resignation. "I found someone else to be his new father. I wanted him to think of this man as his dad." "Him? You mean you were cheating?" "I had already decided to be with him." She spoke in a flat tone, a malicious smile playing on her lips. Emily said that she deeply resented the fact that William and I were seeing Adam. She thought that we were taking him away from her. "You two love Adam so much. I thought that if you were rejected by your grandson, it would hurt you." She had intended to brainwash him into believing that her new boyfriend was his father. Then, by making him reject his grandparents, she wanted to laugh at the sight of us being hurt by him. If Adam rejected us with his own words, she could also blame it on him. and she had planned to use that as an excuse to ask for a divorce. However, Adam had not accepted Emily's boyfriend to the extent that she had hoped. This was something that even Emily hadn't anticipated.
That's why this plan failed. Seriously, what a useless child.
She glared at him resentfully.
I don't need any of you here.
With those words, she stormed out. Only Stephen chased after her.
Emily, wait! What do you mean, you're going to be with your boyfriend?
But a few minutes later, he returned, looking dejected. Emily had jumped into a passing taxi and sped away. Later, a text message arrived on his phone.
I'm going back to my parents' house.
That was all it said, so he had turned back.
In that case, let's contact Emily's parents and have them keep an eye on her.
At William's suggestion, Stephen nodded in agreement. A few days later, on a day that was warm for the season, almost spring-like, they called Emily over to the house for a discussion. The four of us, William, Stephen, Emily, and I, were gathered in the living room.
I want you to take a look at this.
Stephen tossed an envelope containing documents onto the table. It was a report from the private investigator he had hired to look into Emily's activities. Ever since Adam started attending soccer club, Emily's appearance had gradually begun to change. At first, we didn't pay much attention to it. However, Stephen became suspicious when she frequently visited beauty salons and changed her makeup. What was even more decisive was when he accidentally saw her exchanges on her smartphone. The person she was talking to wasn't a friend or acquaintance, but a man he didn't know at all.
I was shaken when I saw messages like "I want to see you again" and "I like you" with heart marks.
Stephen said in a cold manner. Looking at the investigation results, it turned out that the man was a coach from the soccer club. Emily stared at the documents without trying to hide anything.
I was planning to tell you after Dad's birthday party, when the timing was right.
Stephen spoke in a matter-of-fact tone, but like William, he was quietly angry.
I regret not bringing it up sooner.
Emily said nothing. After she ran away, we took Adam to the hospital to have his bruises examined. They had turned blue and red, and Adam told us that they were painful. Upon hearing this, the doctor said that he might have been beaten on a regular basis. The club met twice a week, but was he being hit every time? Or was he being hit by Emily while practicing at home? Adam kept his mouth shut and didn't say anything.
Emily, were you the one who told Adam to keep quiet? I would never do such a thing. I'm so disappointed in you, bullying Adam while having an affair behind our backs. But I just wanted to blow off some steam. That's why. Don't give me that nonsense.
Scolded by Stephen, Emily hung her head powerlessly as he thrust divorce papers at her.
We're getting a divorce. Sign this and get out of here.
Yeah, fine with me. Emily signed her name without hesitation. Just then, the sound of a car pulling up outside could be heard. Emily looked puzzled, but when I let them into the house, her expression froze.
Why, are Dad and Mom here? We've made arrangements to hand you over to your parents.
Before Emily could utter another word, she was dragged away by her parents. All that was left was the hollow sound of the car driving away. The next day, Stephen submitted the divorce papers to the city hall, and they were successfully accepted. He then asked an acquaintance to introduce him to a lawyer and demanded compensation from Emily and her lover. After paying the compensation, her affair became known at her company, making it uncomfortable for her to stay, so she quit. The man she was involved with didn't get off with just paying compensation. The fact that he had an affair with a student's mother became widely known, and he was fired from the soccer club. It was a relatively large club in the area, so rumors spread among the club members and the parents involved. The former coach became unemployed, and even after getting together with Emily, he is dependent on her for support. She is the one supporting him, working herself to the bone as a supermarket cashier and such. Occasionally, we receive messages from her saying, "I want to see Adam." Both Stephen and I have decided to ignore those messages. She has been served with a restraining order to stay away from Adam. We probably won't respond for about 6 months. Stephen sold the house he had bought and moved in with Adam. Adam is now living with William and me.
Dad, Grandpa, look. Oh my. That's Grandpa, isn't it?
Let me see. Adam proudly unfolded the finished drawing to show us. On the paper, William's smiling face was drawn large. The positions of the moles and the shape of the nose were just like William's.
You've drawn it so well. Let's frame it.
As William got up from his seat, Adam laughed. He looked so happy. The bruises on Adam's body healed remarkably after he came to live with us. The doctor had the quick thinking to take X-rays to check for fractures. I still vividly remember the relief we felt when not a single crack was found. He quit the soccer club and is now thriving both at preschool and at home. At home, I teach him drawing, which he loves, while watching him grow. Although the wounds on his young body have healed, I suddenly worried that there might be some lingering scars on his heart.
Next, I'm going to draw Granny,
he declared.
Watch me,
he said as he filled the drawing paper with my face. His free use of colors and gestures revealed a child's uninhibited sensibility. As I observed him, I laughed, realizing that my worries seemed to be unfounded after all.
Mom's been in an accident and taken to the hospital. Please, can you drive me there?
I pleaded with my husband, tears streaming down my face. I had just received word that my mother was in a critical condition, unconscious after a traffic accident. However, upon hearing the situation, my husband responded, "I can't, I'm off to a company trip now," bluntly refusing my desperate request. Even as I persisted, he mocked me, saying, "The trip is more important to me. Visiting someone else's mother in the hospital is a waste of time. I'm definitely not going. My name is Jane. I'm 29 years old. My husband, Ben, who is a year older than me, and I got married 2 years ago, both of us working full-time. We met in the same university club. Although the club had many members and it was hard to talk to everyone, we ended up sitting next to each other at a drinking party one day, which led to us becoming close. We also discovered that we both were only children who grew up in single-mother households after losing our fathers early, which quickly brought us closer together. We started going out more and naturally progressed to dating. When we both became comfortable in our jobs as working adults, Ben proposed. Neither of us is currently thinking about children since we're both focused on our careers. However, we do want them eventually and have talked about buying a detached house when the time comes, shortly after getting married. Currently, we're renting an apartment and live close to both of our parents' homes. Since both our fathers have passed away, our mothers, Sarah and my mother-in-law Mary, live alone but have become very good friends. Their similar experiences of not remarrying and raising a child on their own seem to click. And since our family meeting, they've developed a friendship like no other, often meeting for tea or traveling together. I never expected them to get along so well, but seeing my mother happy with Mary makes me glad they met. Mary is also very fond of me, and we have a good relationship. However, Ben isn't too thrilled that Mary seems to prioritize my mother over him. He has quite the mama's boy trait. I knew from his behavior even before we got married how much he cherished his mother, which I understood, coming from a single-mother household myself. But shortly after we started living together post-marriage, I discovered his true nature. One holiday, I received a message from my mom with a photo attached, saying she was having lunch with Mary. Having lunch with Mary now? I read the message, accompanied by a photo of the two of them smiling, which naturally brought a smile to my face too. Hey, Ben. Looks like Mary and my mom are having lunch. Look, she sent a photo, I said, showing the image to Ben, who was at home at the time. However, his mood soured immediately upon seeing it, and he clicked his tongue in annoyance.
What's this? Some kind of spite against me? Huh? What are you talking about?
At that time, I hadn't realized Ben disliked my mother. True, Ben often didn't talk much in front of my mother. But I thought it was because we were newly married and he was just nervous. I never imagined he would resent my mother simply because she got along well with his own.
Lately, every time I invite Mom out for a meal, she turns me down saying she has plans with Sarah. Doesn't your mother know the meaning of restraint?
I was shocked to hear Ben think this way and speak ill of my mother. Mary, too, seemed to have realized early on that Ben disliked my mother. There was a time when we were dining out as a group, and Ben made a snide remark towards my mother, which Mary couldn't stand and scolded him.
Ben, what is this attitude towards Sarah? Enough is enough. What? You always side with this person. Haven't you always said I'm your precious son? It's not funny preferring someone you've recently become close with over your own son.
Ben retorted, but I honestly found his attachment to Mary to be unnaturally strong. Later, when Ben wasn't around, Mary apologized to my mother and me. I think I've spoiled that boy too much. I'm truly sorry. There's no need for you to worry. I'm not bothered by it either. Ben really loves you. My mother, being gentle-natured and not prone to anger, seemed to accept the situation without blame. However, I could tell right away that she was hurt inside. And Ben, without considering my mother's feelings, progressively worsened his behavior over time. Although Mary would defend my mother, preventing Ben from openly attacking her, he would complain to me whenever my mother and Mary seemed close, eventually even starting to regularly speak ill of my mother. Not long into our second year of marriage, I couldn't take it anymore and had a huge argument with Ben. After a fierce exchange of words, the fundamental issues remained unresolved. And since then, our relationship has become awkward, with less conversation than before. Lately, I've noticed Ben's been coming home late and going out alone on weekends more often. Feeling something was off, I asked him directly. Work's been busy.
Lots of overtime and working on weekends lately,
he said. Despite his explanation, I couldn't shake off my feeling of unease. Then, one Sunday, when we both had the day off, I noticed Ben packing early in the morning. It seemed he wasn't going to work after all. Just as I was about to ask why he was packing, my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Curious, I answered, only to find out it was the police. After confirming I was Sarah's daughter, the officer on the line dropped a bombshell.
Actually, Sarah has been involved in a traffic accident.
My mind went blank.
Mom!
She was already taken to the hospital, in a critical condition and unconscious. After getting the hospital's name, I managed to end the call with trembling hands. Tears started to overflow as I struggled to think, but knew I had to get to the hospital. However, I don't have a driver's license, so I desperately begged Ben for a ride.
Ben, something terrible has happened. Mom's been in an accident and taken to the hospital. Please, we need to go now.
But upon hearing the situation, Ben made a face of displeasure and said, "What?"
I'm about to leave for a company trip. I'll be late for the meetup. Deal with it yourself.
flatly refusing my request.
A company trip. Today? You never mentioned anything.
I realized why he was packing, but I hadn't been informed about the trip at all. And to my shock, he mentioned the trip would last 2 weeks. How can you think of going on a trip at a time like this? Mom might.
Enough. The trip is more important to me. Your mother is just an unrelated stranger to me. Visiting someone I hate is a waste of time, and I'm definitely not going.
Ben hurled cruel words at me, scoffing. Get out of the way. I have a plane to catch and I'm busy. He pushed past me, whistling as he packed his clothes into a suitcase. Furious, I yelled,
You're the worst. Just do whatever you want.
And left the house, hurrying to the hospital by taxi. Ben went on his trip as planned, oblivious to the crisis unfolding around me. I tried calling him multiple times over the 2 weeks, but couldn't get through. When Ben returned home in high spirits 2 weeks later, I gave him a cold look. Now I have to give Mom her souvenirs. I wonder if Mom's doing okay, he said optimistically. Without responding, I quietly agreed to go with him to his mother's house. On the way, Ben happily talked about all the souvenirs he bought for Mary. Ben didn't say a word of concern about my mother, who had been in an accident. Upon arriving at his parents' house and trying to open the door, Ben stopped, puzzled.
Huh? Why is it locked?
It seemed unusual for the door to be locked, since Mary usually didn't lock it when she was home.
Is Mom not here?
Ben murmured. I pushed past Ben, pulled out the spare key I had for their house from my bag, and unlocked the door.
Hey! Why do you have the keys to the house?
Ben looked bewildered, but I didn't respond. Entering the house before me, Ben tilted his head in confusion upon not seeing Mary.
Doesn't something feel off?
As Ben moved towards the bedroom, I stopped him. Not that way. This way, I said, leading him to the living room, where a new portrait of the deceased Mary was displayed.
What?
Stunned, Ben began to tremble, and, half crying, rushed to the portrait, turning to me.
Hey! What's going on? What is this?
I sighed deeply, holding back my anger, and explained.
Mary passed away while you were on your trip. The funeral's already over.
Ben glared at me, furious.
Don't joke around. How can this be? Why does Mom have to die? Wasn't it your mother who was in the accident and in critical condition? If anyone was supposed to die, it should have been her.
Despite Ben's outrageously insensitive outburst, I calmly explained what happened after my mother's accident.
My mom woke up after the accident. She had a fracture and is currently undergoing rehabilitation but is gradually recovering.
Though my mother was still hospitalized, she was slowly getting better thanks to the medical staff's efforts. But Ben was unsatisfied.
Then why did Mom have to?
He asked.
It seems that on the day my mom had her accident, she was on her way to our house.
She fell from a pedestrian bridge. And I hesitated before answering.
I guess you had told Mary about going on a business trip, hadn't you? Yeah, I did mention it, but...
Mary had been suspicious of you lately.
You've been unreachable more often. She probably wanted to verify if you were really going on a business trip.
I explained, and Ben looked shocked. According to Mary a month ago, Ben used to call or message her daily, but recently, communication had almost stopped. Mary had trouble reaching him by phone, and on the rare occasions he did call back, he would quickly say he was busy and hang up. Mary thought Ben, being of a certain age, might have naturally become less dependent on his mother. However, she suspected Ben might be hiding something. With her suspicions growing, Mary decided to check if the business trip story was true. Coincidentally, around the same time, I received the call about my mother's accident. Mary, who passed away, had brought souvenirs from a day trip she took with my mother last month, intending to give them to us. That day, I was too distraught to think of anything but getting to the hospital. So I didn't have the chance to inform Mary about my mother's accident. Mary must have taken the bus to the stop closest to our apartment and then walked the rest of the way. There's a pedestrian bridge on the way, and it seems she fell while climbing it. A witness said she missed a step just before reaching the top and tumbled down. Though an ambulance was called immediately, she had hit her head hard. And that's how Mary died. After explaining this to Ben, I glared at him intensely.
After learning about Mary, I called you numerous times.
Over these 2 weeks, no matter how I tried to contact you, you never answered your phone or replied to any messages. Because there were no other relatives to take on the role, I had to act as the chief mourner at Mary's funeral. With my mother still in a critical state, I had to somehow get through Mary's funeral without her real son.
You've been ignoring all contact for 2 weeks, just out having fun, right? This has shown me exactly who you are. I'm divorcing you.
Upon declaring this, Ben collapsed to the ground, crying loudly.
How can you say that right after Mom died? Now's not the time for divorce talk, is it? I didn't contact you because I was always with my coworkers. I had no time.
As Ben sobbed and made excuses, my anger only grew.
Stop lying!
I raised my voice and pulled out a piece of paper from my bag, thrusting it in front of Ben. It was the itinerary for the company trip I found in Ben's room.
It says here the company trip was from the 12th to the 19th for 1 week. But you were gone from the 5th to the 19th. You said just before leaving it was for 2 weeks, right? So what were you doing and where were you from the 5th to the 12th? Well, that's...
I know. You were cheating, weren't you?
And you spent that week with your affair partner, right?
As I spoke with certainty, Ben, who had stopped crying, began to panic.
What are you talking about? Cheating. I took leave for the remaining week to go on a trip with friends. See, work's been busy, and I needed a break.
Fed up with Ben's continued excuses, I pulled out a mobile phone from my pocket. The moment he saw it, his face turned pale. This mobile phone belonged to Ben, found in his closet while he was away on the trip. Likely, there was another mobile phone in his bag, prepared specifically for communicating with his affair partner. Ben had previously claimed he couldn't contact me while on his trip due to lack of time. But he had left his regular mobile phone at home, making it impossible for him to notice any calls. You've been lying through your teeth. You left this phone at home to spend time with your affair partner, didn't you? As I placed the mobile phone in front of Ben, he began to tremble and slammed his fist on the table.
Yeah, that's right. I've been fed up with you for a long time. I've got someone else I love now.
He shouted defiantly, and then,
And how did you know where to find the mobile phone? Don't tell me you searched my room while I was away.
He yelled, which was exasperating. I looked at Mary's portrait and silently apologized to her for showing such a scene before speaking up. Mary told me. At that, Ben choked on his words. After a big fight with Ben over my mother, he started coming home late and going out alone on his supposed workdays off more often. Suspecting something was off due to his increased unavailability, I had confided in Mary. Mary, sharing her suspicions about Ben, had advised me. Ben has had a habit since he was little of hiding things that are inconvenient for him, like bad test scores or a glass he broke that his father cherished. He's always securely hidden such things in the closet. If you find a bunch of towels there, it's likely he's hiding something among them. After Mary passed away, I remembered her words, checked Ben's closet, and sure enough, found the mobile phone.
I can't believe Mom would tell you such a thing.
Ben was visibly distressed, not having expected Mary to doubt him. However, seeing his dismayed state didn't sway me.
I will be seeking a divorce and compensation. I'm prepared to consult a lawyer and take this to court if necessary,
I stated firmly, conveying my resolve. Ben groaned but, realizing he had no way out, reluctantly agreed. Afterwards, we properly divided our assets, and the divorce was finalized. However, the following month, just as I was settling into my new life, I received a call from Ben. Reluctantly answering, I heard Ben plead.
Jane! Please, I need your help. What's the matter, exactly?
He explained he was in trouble at work after they found out about Mary's funeral. Since Mary had been listed as Ben's dependent, her death and the necessity of returning her insurance card to the company meant that her death was only then reported to the company, revealing that the funeral had taken place during the company trip. Ben was seen as a disrespectful son who didn't attend his own mother's funeral or even show up, garnering cold looks from his colleagues at work. Yet, Ben lied there too, shifting the blame by claiming I hadn't informed him about Mary's funeral. However, hastily sharing different stories with different people only made things worse. His inconsistencies and contradictions eventually unraveled, revealing his lies. Already viewed as inconsiderate, his repeated dishonesty led to doubts about his character, resulting in his isolation and eventual resignation to escape the situation. Now, without income, Ben is living off Mary's inheritance back at his parents' house. But the fact I didn't attend the funeral is known throughout neighborhood, making me feel ostracized. So, I thought about selling the house, but that's proving difficult. Ben is now recognized by the neighbors as the worst son, feeling awkward even just walking outside. He had planned to sell the family home quickly, but due to its age, there is a lack of interest from buyers. I'm really struggling right now. So Jane, let's start over. Remarry me and let's live together. Hearing this, I was disgusted. He was only reaching out because his situation had worsened.
Don't be ridiculous. I've had enough of you. I will never remarry you. Please. I can't go on like this. I don't care about you anymore. You should just live with your affair partner.
Rejecting him outright, Ben started to falter.
No, we've already broken up.
Apparently, the affair partner learned about Mary's funeral and, subsequently, that she was the other woman. Ben had hidden his marital status, leading to her anger and their breakup, leaving him alone. It's your fault. I don't want to be with someone like you. Goodbye. As I was about to hang up.
Wait! If you won't agree to remarry, I'll come to your house and argue in person. You're at your parents' place, right?
Ben threatened. But I'm not. I immediately responded.
Where are you then?
I won't tell you. Also, I've recently changed jobs, so lying in wait at my old company is useless. I've already asked everyone to call the police if you show up after my resignation. I decided to sell my parents' house to distance myself from Ben, despite the low likelihood of finding a buyer due to its age. So with my mother's consent, we sold the land after demolishing the house. My mother, having recently been discharged from the hospital, is deeply saddened by the loss of her close friend, Mary. Thus, we moved to a quiet place to live together, and I switched jobs accordingly.
Then at least tell me where you are. After all, I've received care from your mother, and I want to visit her.
Ben was desperate to find out where I was, but his words only infuriated me. And I was surprised by how cold my response was.
Received care? After you've been nothing but trouble for Mom. Don't start saying convenient things now. Besides, Mom has said she never wants to see you again. What? Wait a minute. Jane.
Ben was still trying to say something, but I mercilessly ended the call. I then blocked his number and changed mine a few days later. Later, I found out that Ben was being sued for compensation by the affair partner he deceived. And he was in a dire situation. Unable to borrow money due to lack of employment. He's been doing day labor and part-time jobs while searching for full-time work. My mother and I have started a new life in a new place. Relieved to have cut ties with Ben and reminiscing about Mary without stress. Mom couldn't attend Mary's funeral, nor has she been able to visit Mary's grave since her hospital stay and the move have kept us busy. It seems she hasn't fully accepted Mary's death, often crying while looking at photos and videos of them together.
I really want to visit Mary soon,
she said sadly, so I replied.
Yes, we should visit her grave soon.
Planning to ensure we don't accidentally encounter Ben. I'm looking forward to making our new life in this new place fulfilling while supporting my mother. On the day we celebrated the 50th wedding anniversary of my in-laws, I arrived late and pulled along my son to introduce him to my sister-in-law, Abigail.
This is my son, Mark.
Mark, say hello.
I'm Mark, I'm 5 years old.
Mark clung to me and looked at Abigail, shyly greeting her.
Abigail, as I mentioned in my letter, my son has a congenital disability.
Before I could finish, Abigail blurted out.
EW, what a monster! Don't let it spread to my kids.
In that moment, both Mark and I froze as if time had stopped. Abigail's husband didn't say anything, but his look of discomfort was evident, clearly wanting to keep his distance. Kevin and the in-laws were speechless and rigid. I couldn't believe what was being said to such a young child, filled with disbelief. Not knowing what to say to the insensitive remarks of Abigail and her company. I stood there motionless until I heard a voice from beside me.
Do people hate me again?
Mark looked down, desperately trying to hold back tears. Such words would hurt an adult, let alone a child.
It's not contagious. He has albinism, which just means he was born with less pigment. It's still a disease, it can spread. Scarlett, get rid of that ugly kid fast. Get out.
My husband was trembling with anger. During the heated argument, tears fell from Mark's eyes. Interrupting Kevin, who seemed ready to confront Abigail, my father-in-law Robert spoke up.
Yes, don't ever come back.
The relief was visible on Abigail and her husband's faces. They smiled triumphantly as if they had found someone who understood them. But their smiles quickly turned to surprise.
What? Dad, what are you doing?
My name is Harper, a 40-year-old housewife living with my husband, Kevin, and our son, Mark. Only 5 years ago, the thought of living happily as a family of 3 was unimaginable. Kevin and I had always wanted children but were unable to conceive. I desperately wanted a child, and so did Kevin, which led us to seek fertility treatments at a hospital. There were days when it was hard to see pregnant women in the waiting room, reminding me that children are a gift. Despite careful diet and health management, I often wondered why I couldn't have a child, leading to days filled with self-loathing. The fertility treatments were not only emotionally taxing but also a financial burden, leading to many tearful nights. During those times, the person who was always there to support me was none other than Kevin. His encouragement, holding my hand, and accompanying me to the hospital were incredibly reassuring.
It's okay, I'm sure our baby is just waiting for the right time to come to us. Miraculously, his words gave me hope, and I became more positive. The following year, our efforts paid off, and I became pregnant. We sharing the news with my in-laws Robert and Chloe, who were overjoyed. The baby grew healthy inside me, and we looked forward to the delivery day. On the day of birth, hearing the lively cries, I was deeply relieved and eagerly wished to see the baby's face. Yet, the child born had skin and hair so white and delicate, it seemed touching could break them, like an angel. Needless to say, Kevin and I were astonished. We were confused, as no one in our families had such an appearance.
Why?
The doctor explained our child had oculocutaneous albinism, a congenital condition known as albinism.
Albinism? The one that happens to 1 in 20,000 people.
It's a disease associated not just with physical appearance but also vision problems and sensitivity to sunlight. I regretted not being able to give birth to a normal child after fertility treatments. However, seeing the baby, all that faded away, and we embraced our child fully.
It doesn't matter if it's a rare disease. Our child is as beautiful and precious as an angel.
Exactly. This child chose us. Thank you, thank you. Thus, Kevin and I accepted our long-awaited baby positively and with hope. We named the child Mark and decided to raise him with love. Introducing him as our angel to the in-laws, they were initially surprised, but eventually warmed up to Mark's innocent smile.
It might be hard, but you two will surely overcome everything. If you ever need help, we're here for you.
The in-laws accepted and promised to love and care for him together. Mark's main concerns were managing sunlight exposure and weak vision. When going outside, sunscreen is essential, and Mark also needs assistive devices for his vision. However, now, thanks to the internet, connecting with friends who share the same concerns has lessened the feeling of struggling alone. There are several considerations in Mark's life, but otherwise, he's a healthy and mischievous boy. Kevin and I are delighted to see Mark increasingly doing things on his own. And before we knew it, 4-5 years had flown by. During this time, we visited the in-laws' house for Christmas, long weekends, and whenever the timing was right. The in-laws live about a 10-minute bus ride away, and from the station. Robert always picks us up in his car, mindful of Mark's condition.
Thank you for always picking us up. No problem. I always can't wait to see my grandson.
Once in the car, Mark always brightened up. Certainly, he liked cars, but there was a more pressing issue for him. The stares from others. When on the bus, some people would gawk or recoil at Mark's appearance, whispering or turning away. There were even times when people pointed their phone cameras at him, leading us to ask them to stop and shielding Mark from their view. Such actions deeply saddened me as a mother and sometimes made me angry, wondering why they would do such things. Affected by these stares, Mark would shrink into himself on the bus. Especially since turning 5, he would hide behind me or Kevin, or cling to Robert and Chloe, curling up small. Thinking how hard it must be for Mark himself tightened my chest with pain. One night, before bed, Mark asked, "Mom, Dad, am I weird? Does everyone dislike me? Why would you think that?" I replied, "Because, in the train, everyone looks at me so much." Hearing Mark express his feelings was heart-wrenching, and I've never felt more distressed. Kevin seemed troubled too, his brows slightly furrowed. I pulled Mark close, looked him in the eyes, and assured him, "You're not weird, and nobody dislikes you. Even if people look, you can hold your head high." With tears welling up in his eyes, he listened to my words and simply replied, "Okay, I understand. Mark, how about you sleep with Dad tonight?"
Okay. Read me a story? Excited, Kevin headed to the bedroom with Mark. Watching them, I stayed in the living room, sighing.
The 50th anniversary celebration for Robert and Chloe is coming up, and I'm a bit worried.
At kindergarten, there are teachers to support and friends who are told about Mark's condition, which offers some comfort, but public places are a different story. Struggling with this challenge, Mark, Kevin, and I were all searching for solutions, discussing with friends as well. Recently, Kevin brought up the 50th wedding anniversary celebration of the in-laws. Abigail, my sister-in-law living far away, would be coming, and it was suggested we celebrate grandly with her family.
Mark hasn't met Abigail yet. It might be a good opportunity, don't you think, Scarlett? Abigail too?
Truthfully, I didn't have the best impression of Abigail, my sister-in-law. Her family moves often due to her husband's job, and I've only met them once or twice. When Mark was born, I sent a letter but received no reply. Worried they didn't care about our family, I felt anxious about introducing Mark. When I shared my concerns, Kevin reassured me with a smile, "It'll be okay.
Abigail isn't that bad, and her husband has always been nice to me." "Okay,"
I conceded, perhaps overly concerned about others' judgments. Maybe Abigail and her husband are genuinely kind, and the lack of response to my letter was just due to their circumstances. If they're coming all this way to celebrate their parents' 50th anniversary, we shouldn't dismiss their intent. While I could handle any comments about me, I worried whether Mark would be accepted or subjected to stares like on the bus. But we agreed to include Abigail's family. And so, with lingering anxiety, we approached the day of the 50th anniversary celebration. Due to flight schedules, Abigail's family would arrive later. For this special day, instead of Robert's car, Kevin and I escorted the in-laws to a high-end restaurant. Because we had a reservation, I said, "I'm Harper," and the receptionist led us to our room. Robert and Chloe, smiling happily, held Mark's hand as they walked to their seats. The stylish space, fitting about 10 people, was lit with soft lighting, creating a calm atmosphere. "Grandpa and Grandma are happy." "I'm happy too." "Yes, Mark is happy too." Mark seemed to understand today was special, smiling more than usual. He was dressed in new clothes bought for the occasion, looking even cuter, which made the staff lady smile. After some time chatting, Abigail's family arrived late. They appeared in formal attire, and Scarlett, Mark's cousin, was also dressed in a cute outfit. "Sorry we're late." "Dad, Mom, congratulations today." Abigail dropped her bag and greeted Robert and Chloe. Of course, Abigail's husband and Scarlett smiled and said, "Congratulations." When they settled, I nervously greeted Abigail's family. Abigail, long time no see. Thank you for coming all this way today." "Ah, right." However, she responded indifferently, as if she barely knew me. Gathering my courage, I brought Mark over to introduce him.
This is my son, Mark." "Say hello, Mark." "I'm Mark, 5 years old."
Mark clung to me and shyly greeted Abigail.
"Abigail, as I mentioned in my letter, my son has a congenital disability."
Before I could finish, Abigail bluntly said,
"EW, what a monster. Don't let it spread to us."
Instantly, Mark and I froze as if time had stopped. Abigail's husband, without saying a word, clearly looked uncomfortable, clearly wanting to keep his distance. Kevin and the in-laws were speechless and stiff. I was filled with disbelief at what was said to such a young child. Not knowing what to say to the inconsiderate Abigail, I stood there motionless, but then I was brought back to reality by a voice from beside me. "Do people hate me again?" Mark looked anxious, holding my hand. Laughing, Abigail said,
"Yeah, nobody wants to see your face."
Mark looked down, trying hard not to cry. Such words would hurt an adult, let alone a child. I thought about slapping Abigail right there, but hugged Mark tightly instead.
What are you saying, Abigail? That's not true. That's right. Abigail, how could you say that?
Chloe hugged me and Mark in defense.
What? Mom, you're defending that monster? It's gross, like, it's all white and has white hair. Is it contagious? Get it away if it's going to spread. It's not contagious. It doesn't spread. He has albinism, a condition of being born with less pigment. So, it is a disease. It could spread. Why did you bring him? Stay away. Scarlet, stay back. Abigail, don't say that. Mark is not a monster, nor is it contagious. Don't treat him like that. Kevin, is that really your child? Unbelievable. Why can't you be more considerate, Abigail? Just get rid of that ugly kid, fast. Get out.
Kevin's hands trembled with anger. During the heated argument, tears streamed down Mark's face. Intervening before Kevin could confront Abigail, Robert spoke up.
Yes, don't ever come back.
Only Abigail and her husband were relieved by those words. Their faces wore a triumphant look, as if to say they have found an ally. But that smile quickly vanished, turning into a look of surprise.
What? Dad, what are you doing?
Robert had grabbed Abigail and her husband's bags and threw them out of the room. Then, after clapping his hands together, he turned back to the astonished couple.
To treat a polite child who greeted you upon meeting for the first time, like this. That's not my daughter. You are the monsters. I don't want to see such ugly faces. But Dad, what if you and Mom catch it? I'm worried. No need to worry. If you had the heart to worry about me, you could have considered Mark's feelings too. Why didn't you? No, come on, that's just not normal, no matter how you look at it. Stop saying such heartless things. Get out now.
Abigail's couple was taken aback by Robert's demeanor, unseen by Kevin and me before. They seemed to want to say something more, but then a voice exclaimed, "Stop it." All eyes, including Kevin's, turned to the source. Surprisingly, it was Scarlett, dressed in her cute outfit. Her cheeks flushed.
Albinism isn't contagious, and he's not a monster. Why would you say that? Dad and Mom, that's awful.
She declared this with all her might, tears streaming down her face. That alone showed she was angry and hurt for Mark, which made me incredibly happy. Yet, Abigail harshly responded to her daughter.
Scarlett, be quiet. You don't know anything. You're the one who doesn't know anything, Mom. I'm so embarrassed right now. Hating Mark without even trying to understand him. I hate you too.
Scarlett's almost shouting voice turned Abigail and her husband pale. Undeterred, Scarlett ran to Mark, towering slightly like an older sister, and gently stroked his head. Don't cry. You should smile. You're not a monster, and you're not disliked. The people who say that are wrong. Okay. Both Scarlett and Mark's faces were smeared with tears and runny noses. It was difficult to get Abigail and her husband to understand Mark, but Scarlett was different, which was reassuring. Seeing Scarlett approach Mark and pat his head, Abigail seemed to snap out of it, hastily leaving with her husband without a word. The commotion drew the attention of other patrons outside, likely making Abigail's family feel unwelcome. While some staff members asked patrons to return to their seats, we resumed our conversation as if nothing had happened. The rest of the meal went smoothly, without tears or derogatory words, marking a peaceful time. After the 50th wedding anniversary celebration ended, and we returned to our usual lives, I was struck by a question. How did Scarlett know about albinism?
Kevin, did you talk to her on the phone? No, I haven't. I thought you had told her, Harper.
Wondering how she knew about Mark without us telling her, we received a letter. The sender was Scarlett, who had apparently gotten our address from Robert and Chloe. The letter, written on cute heart pattern stationery like that of a young girl, contained her earnest words. After dinner that day, we decided to read the letter together. The letter began with, "To Mark's mom and dad," sharing Scarlett's personal thoughts on people with albinism. Scarlett, due to her parents' moves, had changed schools several times, about 3 in total. At one of her previous schools, there was a child with albinism similar to Mark. This child had white hair and wore special glasses for poor vision. But after the teacher's explanation, all classmates respected and treated the child well. And Scarlett liked that child. Without discrimination against anyone, not minding their own disability. And being kind to everyone, she found them genuinely cool and fell for them. Even with poor eyesight, they had great hearing, were good at singing, and could play the piano. I wanted to be as kind as them, but Mom was different. On a day when parents gathered, seeing the albino child with Scarlett, Abigail frowned immediately.
Scarlett, who's that child? Dyeing hair in elementary school? And those ugly glasses don't suit at all. You shouldn't play with that child, okay? Understand?
Saying so, she complained. Scarlett was filled with disbelief and felt very upset. Shocked and frustrated at her inability to retort her mother's heartless words. So, I felt relieved when I could finally speak up about Mark. Reading the letter made me feel warm, realizing Scarlett had been harboring those feelings during the 50th wedding anniversary celebration. Later, Scarlett settled in her current school and, driven by a desire to be understood, read an essay on albino awareness during an open class.
My parents labeled my cousin a monster without trying to understand albinism. I think those who say such things have monstrous hearts.
I hope more people understand albinism and refrain from saying terrible things like my parents did. I wish for a class where everyone respects each other as they did at my previous school. The composition she read on open day, advocating for mutual respect, was highly praised. At the same time, Abigail and her husband faced condemning stares and were embarrassed. Following that open day, they were viewed coldly by other parents in the neighborhood, and Scarlett was scolded by Abigail. But she seemed unfazed, hoping to grow up to be someone who can eloquently explain and support people with albinism. Please be kind and stand tall, Mark. I'll do my best too. See you. The letter ended with this message, accompanied by a cartoon character sticker that seemed like it could come from a girl's magazine, saying your ally. Of course, Mark still can't read well, nor does he fully understand the meaning of the words. But when I carefully explained how to read it, Mark, with a happy smile, excitedly shouted, "Ally, ally." Seeing this made both Kevin and I happy, and we all ended up laughing together. In fact, since the day of the 50th wedding anniversary celebration, Mark, perhaps remembering Scarlett's words, has always stood tall, never shrinking, whether on the bus or at kindergarten. What kind of mental change occurred, I'm not sure, but it seems Mark has understood Scarlett's words in his own way. When going to meet the in-laws, as usual, we got on the bus and sat down. Some high school girls who seemed to have finished school early were talking about Mark, covering their mouths but their eyes laughing. What's that? White hair. I was considering changing seats, but then I noticed Mark had also seen the girls and was staring back at them.
Mark?
When I called out to him, Mark, still looking at the high school girls, smiled back at them. Surprised, perhaps, the girls moved away, flustered. There were other times when we were talked about or stared at, but Mark began to smile back each time. The speakers would feel guilty, stopping their gossip and diverting their attention to their phones. It seems to be Mark's own way of handling situations, though I wondered where he learned such diplomacy. But upon reflection, Scarlett had encouraged him that day, "Don't cry, just smile." Those words must have resonated with Mark. It's not that there are no more people who mock or stare or demean based on appearance. In fact, we'll likely encounter more such people. Seeing Mark not just protected by me, his mom, but protecting himself, made me feel incredibly proud of his growth. Our child is striving to live with strength.
Maybe it's thanks to Scarlett.
I often think, if only there were more kind-hearted children like Scarlett. Discussing this with friends, I found support among other moms, leading to small educational gatherings in public spaces. If both those directly involved and those around them can understand each other, surely we can connect kind-hearted people and create a slightly kinder world than today. I hope for a world where more people, like Scarlett, understand and treat those with disabilities without discrimination, making it a better place for Mark to live positively. Seeing my granddaughter Mary not touching her hamburger, the server approached us with a stern tone.
"You need to eat what you've ordered, or it'll be a problem."
Would you normally say that to a customer? Arguing seemed futile, so I responded humbly. "I'm sorry. I think she's just waiting for mine to arrive." After my apologetic reply, the server walked away, looking dissatisfied. What a rude attitude. Trying to lighten the mood, I turned to Mary.
"Let's eat, shall we?"
But Mary remained downcast.
"What's wrong?"
Something seemed off. Then, the same server came back to our table, carrying something.
"Here's the toy that comes with the kids' meal."
She slammed the toy onto the table. Looking up at the server, I saw her smirking at Mary. It was a chilling sight. Mary must have felt something was wrong too.
"I don't want this."
She threw the toy on the table to the floor. She's never usually so rough. Now. We shouldn't throw things. As I tried to calm Mary and pick up the toy she had thrown. Suddenly,
"Grandma, let's get out of here."
Mary grabbed my arm as I was reaching for the toy and shouted. Looking at the discarded toy, I noticed a piece of paper with something written on it.
"Grandma, no."
Ignoring Mary's plea, I looked at the folded paper and felt a chill. It was a Saturday. I was on my way to my son Jim's house. It was a warm day, hinting that spring was near. Then, "Mom, thanks for today as well." As soon as I arrived, Jim and his wife Kate left the house together for their once or twice a month Saturday work.
"Grandma, what's for lunch today?"
After seeing her parents off, Mary came to me with a lovely smile. "How about we go out to eat today?" Mary was delighted with my suggestion. "My name is Ellie. I am 63 years old this year. When my son and his wife are busy, I come to look after Mary like this. Having lost my husband early and spent a lot of time alone, the time spent with my granddaughter was nothing short of happiness for me. My son Jim has always tried hard not to be a burden on me. Even though there's no need for him to worry about me, he's been working ever since he graduated from high school. Thinking back, his first job was terrible. It was then I truly understood what a black company was, even as a parent. He would leave for work early in the morning and return home around the time the date changed. You could visibly see him getting thinner, even though he was quite well built, as he continued with that lifestyle. Seeing my son Jim become increasingly distressed, I somehow managed to convince him, and finally, he decided to quit that job. It had been 3 years since he started working there. Though there seemed to be some issues with the company upon leaving, I felt relieved once he was free from that place. "I'm going to be unemployed for a while." Jim said this with a look of regret, but seeing my child physically and mentally deteriorating was much harder for me. When I told him that, "I'll take my time to think and decide on the next place," he smiled, seemingly reassured. Being a hard worker, he continued his job search while studying for a qualification in a field he was interested in, and finally, he found a new job. I was worried because of the first experience, but the new workplace turned out to be surprisingly clean. He would come home on time, and there was no unpaid overtime. Jim seemed to have some peace of mind and was lively and enthusiastic about going to work every day. When he started to be recognized for his abilities and got on a career track, "There's something important I want to talk about," he said suddenly with a serious look. "I'm sensitive to these things." He must want to introduce a girlfriend. "Something important?" I feigned ignorance and asked. "There's someone I want you to meet, Mom." My intuition was right. Jim had dated a few women before. I wasn't explicitly told, but you can somehow tell. But this was the first time he wanted to introduce someone to me. "So, that means?" "I'm free whenever, so let me know when you've decided on a day to bring her over," I said casually, feeling a mix of happiness and sadness. Later, the woman Jim brought over was polite and greeted properly. I've always taught Jim to greet properly since he was young. So, the first impression was perfect. I didn't intend to judge, but I couldn't help noticing her appearance and behavior. "Nice to meet you, I'm Kate." She seemed nervous, her small frame tense. "Nice to meet you too, I'm Jim's mom." Wondering if I'd been staring too much, I greeted her brightly to ease the tension. "Jim, why don't you two sit in the living room and wait?" While they waited in the living room, I prepared some coffee. Before bringing it over, they were whispering to each other but quieted down when they saw me. As I served the coffee, I heard them say thank you. But then, there was silence for a while. How do mothers around the world liven up moments like these? It's my first time, and I'm just puzzled. Huh? But it's everyone's first time in these situations, isn't it? Realizing something so obvious made me laugh unexpectedly. Jim and Kate looked at me, puzzled. "I'm sorry. It's just that it's the first time Jim's brought a girlfriend over, so I'm a bit nervous." I decided to just be myself from now on. After all, we're going to be a family for a long time. "I'm nervous too. But today, we have something we want to tell you, Mom." Here it comes. This is the moment to listen seriously. "Mom, we're thinking of getting married." I thought so. "We've already got the okay from Kate's parents, but..." Jim stops mid-sentence, looking surprised. Next to him, Kate also seems flustered. What are they both so flustered about? "Mom." They peek at my face, worried. Wondering what was happening, I felt something cold spill onto my hand on my lap. It took me a moment to realize, but it seems tears were falling from my eyes. "I'm so sorry. Did I do something wrong?" It's the first meeting, and here the mother of the person they want to marry is suddenly crying. Kate's panicked reaction is now a funny story, but at that moment, she must have been really anxious. "Oh, why is this happening? I'm not even sure myself." Saying that, I laughed through my tears. I had no intention of opposing Jim's marriage. In fact, I was happy that he had finally found someone to be happy with other than me. These tears must be of happiness. But I couldn't deny feeling like a part of my heart was being taken away. After excusing myself for a moment and coming back, they still looked worried. With a deliberately cheerful voice, I said, "Kate, I trust Jim. If he chose you, I know everything will be okay no matter what." Kate seemed to be waiting for what I would say next.
Promise me, both of you, to build a happy family together.
I could see Kate's expression brighten.
Thank you, Mom. All right, no more serious talk.
With that, I started asking about how they got to know each other and their journey to deciding on marriage. While Jim was seeing Kate out, I muttered to my husband's portrait, "Jim is getting married. Time flies, doesn't it?" It felt as if the portrait of my husband smiled back. Kate works at the same place as Jim, and she plans to continue working even after getting married. Jim wanted to live together, but I declined. I didn't want to intrude on the young couple, and I was looking forward to having time to myself, neither wanting to be a burden nor to burden them. They decided on a new home within cycling distance from our house, and Jim moved out. Time flew by, and soon my granddaughter Mary was born. I was amazed at how adorable a creature a grandchild could be. As Kate's maternity leave was coming to an end, I checked with Jim. "Have you decided who will look after Mary?" I was hoping for a chance to take care of Mary. Not out of kindness or obligation, but because I wanted to be with her. However, Jim thought I was worried and gave me a disappointing reply.
Mom, don't worry. Our company has a daycare.
Jim's new job really seemed to be a respectable white-collar company. I guess I won't be taking care of her. A few days later, Kate, who had been observing our conversation, brought me hope.
"Ellie, are you free this Saturday?"
She asked over the phone, and since I had no particular plans, I inquired about the matter. "Actually, both Jim and I have sudden work on Saturday, and the daycare is closed on Saturdays." I immediately responded, "Mary? You mean if I could take care of Mary?" I was leaning forward even though I was on the phone. "Could you?" I almost answered too eagerly, but kept my composure.
"Yes, that's fine."
My voice must have trembled with excitement. Kate sounded happy on the other end of the phone. Since then, I occasionally take care of Mary, which has continued to this day. As it approached noon, I took Mary out. As promised, we walked to the nearby family restaurant. I would prefer to eat at home, but after receiving suspicious calls and an unexpected pizza delivery while taking care of Mary at Jim's house, I felt uneasy. The family restaurant we were heading to was where I had worked part-time before, familiar and convenient for us. Upon arrival, the staff guided us to the usual spacious sofa seat. It was Saturday lunchtime, but it wasn't too crowded. "Mary, what would you like to eat today?" I handed her the menu while sitting next to her.
"I want the kids' menu."
Mary opened the menu to the kids' menu page.
"I'll have this."
She pointed to her usual choice, a hamburger. Mary really loves hamburgers, doesn't she? Seeing Mary's smiling face, I chose my own meal. Although spring was near, the days were still a bit chilly. I decided on the seasonal pot au feu. After placing our order via the touch panel, we went to the drink bar. Mary chose orange juice, and I filled a cup with coffee, then we returned to our seats. "Did Grandma know I like hamburgers?"
"Of course."
It was a casual conversation, but my face was smiling the whole time. "Right, Mary. Go to the bathroom before we eat." Mary often wants to go to the bathroom during meals, so I encouraged her to go ahead.
"Okay."
With a lively response, Mary headed to the bathroom. Her steps seemed lighter, perhaps excited for the hamburger. Her retreating figure was endearing to me. When Mary returned, the hamburger was served. But she didn't start eating. Maybe she was waiting for my meal to arrive. "Mary, you can start eating." I encouraged, but Mary looked at me puzzled. That's when the server brought my pot au feu. Noticing Mary hadn't touched her burger, the server spoke in a stern tone.
You need to eat what you've ordered.
Would you normally say that to a customer? Surprised, I thought about the food waste issue and wondered if staff were instructed to say this. Arguing seemed pointless, so I responded humbly. I'm sorry. She's just waiting for mine. We'll make sure it's eaten. The server left with a look of dissatisfaction. She was strikingly beautiful but had such a poor attitude. Shaking off my astonishment, I encouraged Mary.
Let's eat.
However, Mary remained downcast and didn't touch her hamburger. What's wrong, Mary? Something seemed off. Then the same server approached with something in hand.
Here's the toy that comes with the kids' meal,
she said bluntly, placing the toy on the table. Something was wrong. I boldly looked at the server, who was smirking at Mary. It wasn't a kind smile, but something creepy, as if plotting. Feeling a chill, Mary must have sensed something too.
I don't want this.
She threw the toy on the floor. Something she'd never normally do. Under different circumstances, I would scold her, but this was different. Aware of other customers, I tried to calm her. Now. We shouldn't throw things. As I tried to calm Mary and pick up the toy she had thrown. Suddenly,
Grandma, let's get out of here.
Mary grabbed my arm as I was reaching for the toy and shouted, What are you talking about? I noticed something had come out of the discarded toy. Like a piece of paper.
Grandma, no!
Ignoring Mary's plea, I looked at the folded paper and was horrified. It was covered in what looked like a spell. What is this? I remembered the suspicious calls at Jim's house, with a voice chanting a spell as soon as I answered. Could there be a connection? Noticing something was wrong, the manager came out from the back. Is there something wrong? He asked, offering a hand as I crouched. He seemed to notice the paper in my hand.
What is this?
The manager looked disgusted. Standing up, I explained the situation. The unpleasant server just glared at Mary, silent.
I'm very sorry.
The manager apologized, but the woman wouldn't take her eyes off Mary. I feared for Mary's safety and hugged her close, addressing the woman.
Even though the manager has apologized, don't you have anything to say?
I had tried not to upset her, but it seems I reached my limit too. My tone became a bit harsh. Perhaps triggered by my tone, the woman suddenly shouted,
If it weren't for this brat.
She lunged at Mary. Instinctively, I shielded Mary, and the woman scratched me, yelling,
Move! Let go!
The manager tried to stop her, but he couldn't restrain her alone. Hearing the commotion, several male staff members subdued her, and someone had called the police. Mary started crying out of fear. I'm sorry, Mary, I said, holding my scratched area and comforting her trembling body. Before the situation escalated further, Mary and I were taken to the restaurant's office. The woman was there too.
Emma, why did you do that?
The manager asked her, but she remained silent. I'm really sorry. The store manager apologized to us again. As I was pondering over the situation, the police arrived. Emma, 33 years old. I overheard her name during the separate questioning. I told the police about Emma's aggressive behavior towards Mary for not eating her hamburger and about the suspicious paper in the toy. Then, Mary, who had been listening. Grandma, it's not that. She tugged at my sleeve. What's wrong? I asked, but she seemed hesitant. Mary, can you tell me that story? A young police officer gently encouraged her. I saw it. When I was going to the bathroom, that woman put shrimp in the hamburger. Mary hesitantly testified. It was a fact I hadn't known.
So that's why you didn't eat it?
It sounded like Emma clicked her tongue. The young officer seemed to realize.
This child has a shellfish allergy.
He finally understood and asked the manager to check if the hamburger was still available.
Too bad, it must have been disposed of by now.
Emma spoke up for the first time after the two had left the office, crossing her arms and legs with a disdainful look.
Could you answer our questions as well?
The officer sighed in disbelief at her questioning.
That's what I've been saying. I have nothing to tell. I'll keep silent.
Emma fell silent again, idly playing with her loosely permed hair, looking bored. Her demeanor changed drastically when the manager and the young police officer returned to the office. In the officer's hand was a plate with a cold hamburger. Emma looked as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Under the police officer's supervision, the manager cut the hamburger open. Inside wasn't just shrimp, but also crab meat used in crab cream croquettes.
Does this restaurant's hamburgers normally contain shrimp and crab meat?
The officer asked. Probably for confirmation.
No, they do not.
The manager seemed disappointed. Then, everyone in the room turned their gaze towards Emma. She kept her head down and didn't move, but then she started to shake her shoulders.
Emma.
When the manager spoke to her, a small voice leaked out. I thought she might be crying. But it turned out she was trying to suppress laughter. Lifting her face, she finally couldn't hold back and burst out laughing loudly.
I got caught.
Her voice was buoyant, like someone caught in a mischievous act, clearly enjoying herself.
I'll tell you everything. But I want that handsome guy over there, not you.
She pointed at the young police officer after hearing our conversation.
Behave yourself.
The officer who had been questioning Emma scolded her.
Oh, don't look so scary.
Emma winked, but it seemed ineffective on the experienced officer. What a woman. I could only stare in disbelief at the scene. The details Emma bragged about were beyond normal comprehension for me. She claimed to be Jim's ex-girlfriend, a co-worker from his previous black company. Jim was treated as incompetent there, so Emma had broken up with him. However, upon hearing rumors of Jim's success at his new job, she attempted to reconnect. But Jim. Emma showed no remorse for her actions.
I even graciously offered to get back together, and he rejected me.
She complained. Understandably so. Jim was already married to Kate, and they had Mary.
I thought if I could just deal with a child, he'd choose me over that plain woman.
She spoke as if expecting understanding, but surely no one empathized. Emma had been monitoring Jim and Mary, engaging in harassment whenever she disapproved of something. The delivery orders I didn't recognize and the suspicious calls were her doing. When I started bringing Mary to this family restaurant, Emma also started working here, learning Mary's preferences and allergies. I was horrified. I even regretted inadvertently revealing Mary's allergy myself. I embraced Mary as she leaned against me. I thought I finally had my chance today. After confessing everything, Emma sighed with disappointment. When her story ended, the police officer took her away from the office. As she left, she glared at Mary and laughed creepily, which made me tighten my embrace. After apologizing to the restaurant staff for the inconvenience and thanking the person who saved the hamburger from being disposed of, Mary and I went back to Jim's house. We waited for Kate and Jim to come home and then told them about the day's events.
That woman, she did what?
Jim clenched his fist, trembling with anger, but Kate gently enveloped his hand.
I had heard about her, but what a terrible woman.
Kate knew of her from Jim's stories. If only I had rejected her more firmly. No, it's not your fault.
I should have been more careful, too. Leaving everything to Ellie and even making her scared. Both Jim and Kate blamed themselves. I felt the same. Had I adequately protected Mary while she was in my care? In the heavy silence, Kate finally spoke. At least Mary is safe. That's all that matters. To ensure such an incident wouldn't repeat, we discussed and decided that Jim's family would move. Emma was sentenced to a severe prison term for attempting to harm a child. Unsatisfied with the verdict, she became frenzied and violent in court, looking possessed. Watching her from the gallery, Kate and I decided to remodel our home to protect Mary from that demon again. Emma continued to chant spells in prison, deemed insane, and was eventually transferred to a psychiatric ward. I was certain she wouldn't leave there. Watching her frenzied state confirmed my belief. But still, we needed reassurance. Jim's family moved into a home equipped with security cameras, alarms, and immediate security response. Kate switched to part-time work for more flexibility and spent more time with Mary. We were determined never to let Mary be scared again. We likely still share that sentiment.
Grandma, why do you look scared?
5 years later, Mary, soon to be a 5th grader, peered into my face. Oh? Did I look scared? I diverted the topic. Let's get ready. Aren't we going out to eat? And also called out to Kate and Mary's sister, Lucy. It was Saturday. Basking in the warm spring sunshine, we started walking. Mary held Lucy's hand as they walked ahead, while Kate and I followed, watching their backs.
I'm too scared to eat food from strangers. Those were the words Kevin, my brother who's 8 years younger than me, spat at me at the doorstep of my parents' house. I had come over to visit because it was Kevin's 20th birthday today, and I wanted to celebrate with him. The birthday cake I had brought as a gift was snatched from my hands by Kevin in a rough manner. The cake, still in its box, hit my body, leaving it in a sad, crumbled mess. How could he? I never expected him to do something so cruel. My father Joseph and mother Melissa, watching from behind Kevin, started laughing, clutching their stomachs as they doubled over. I was in shock, standing there with cake debris all over me, as my parents caught their breath, continuing to laugh while treating me like I was some outsider, just like Kevin. Well, your last name is different, isn't it? People with a different last name aren't family. It was shocking to hear them say that just because I'd taken my husband's last name after marriage, I was no longer considered part of the family. When I questioned them, they briefly gave me puzzled looks, then burst into laughter again. You were more like a maid from the beginning, weren't you? I always wanted a boy. It's your fault for being born a girl. I felt a cold breeze cut through me, chilling me to my core. Once a woman marries and leaves the house, she's no longer part of the family. Kevin said this while grabbing the gift I had been holding. I'll take this, though, his tone shifting to one of selfish convenience. We only celebrate with family, so you should leave, since you're not family anymore. With a gesture as if she was shooing away a stray animal, my mother pushed me away. Taking a deep breath, I complied with their wishes and told them I would no longer send them any financial support. I thought at least they would show some concern, maybe panic a little, but instead, both my parents and Kevin just sneered, claiming it was a bluff, mocking me. It took exactly 1 month for my so-called "What do you mean by this? Explain yourself" ex-family to come banging at my door, screaming. My name is Amanda. I'm 28 years old. From elementary school through high school, I consistently maintained good grades and went on to a state university. After graduating, I landed a job at a reasonably well-known company, If you look at it that way, you might think I've had a perfectly normal, even privileged life. But that's far from the truth. Until second grade, I was an average child, not rich, but living a relatively simple and peaceful life. Everything changed when Kevin, 8 years younger than me, was born. My parents, ecstatic that they finally had a son to carry on the family name, started doting on Kevin while pushing me aside. No, looking back, just being ignored might have been better, because with both their jobs and Kevin to take care of, my parents began making me do all the household chores. I had become what is now known as a young carer. A young carer is a child under 18 who regularly takes on tasks or responsibilities that would normally be handled by an adult, like household chores, family care, or even providing support for a sick family member. When I first learned this term recently, it hit me that this was exactly what I had been. With Kevin in her arms, my mother would yell at me as soon as I walked in the door from school, my bag barely set down. "Amanda, get started on dinner. It's bad enough that your cooking tastes terrible, at least put some effort into it." Of course, my mother had never actually taught me how to cook, so how was I supposed to prepare dinner? But I knew that if I didn't try, I'd just get scolded, so I started borrowing cookbooks from the school library, desperately trying to teach myself basic meals that even a kid could make. I still remember the time I made scrambled eggs for the first time, and there were pieces of eggshell in it. My parents yelled at me for that. They also complained that the meal was too plain, but at that time, that was the best I could do. Every day, I was scolded until I could manage to make decent meals using ready-made and frozen foods. Looking back as an adult, I wonder why my parents didn't fear the idea of a child cooking on their own with fire and hot surfaces involved. The bathroom was filthy. You're supposed to be the older sister, and yet you can't even clean properly. My dad would always find some small stain or dirt and use it as an excuse to yell at me. It wasn't just cooking and cleaning. Laundry was also my responsibility. Every morning before school, I hung up the laundry, and when I came home, I had to put it away. If it rained, it was my fault for not checking the weather forecast. How was I supposed to know the weather when I wasn't even allowed to watch TV? Looking back, I now realize this was far beyond what could be considered typical chores for a child. At the time, I didn't notice because it was just expected of me. While I was doing all these household tasks, I'd watch Kevin being doted on and spoiled, and I couldn't help but feel jealous of him. As time went on, I started focusing solely on how to avoid getting yelled at and how to make my parents happy. That mindset helped me become efficient at doing chores and also allowed me to stay near the top of my class. But no matter how good I became at housework or schoolwork, my parents never praised me, even when I cooked a delicious meal. "Finally, you've managed to make something decent. You really are such a slow learner," they would say. And when I brought home a perfect score on a test, "A smart girl isn't really that cute, you know." Instead of praising me, they would mock me. By the time I was in my last year of elementary school, one of my research projects was selected to represent my school in a competition. Even if my parents would not praise me for my housework or studies, maybe they'd be proud of me for something else. I had that hope in my heart when I told them about it. "What? You've been wasting time on a research project. If you have time for that, shouldn't you be cleaning the house and helping your parents instead of being happy for me?" They scolded me again. By the time I finished middle school, I had given up on trying to make them proud or even happy. I just tried to live in a way that wouldn't get me scolded. Even Kevin began to act like he was better than me. When I told them I wanted to go to college, "Amanda, going to college? Don't be ridiculous," they mocked me. I wanted to say, "Who are you to talk?" when you never got more than 60 points on a single elementary school test. But I didn't. I knew that if I talked back, I'd just get yelled at again. College is expensive. You'll need to get a job and help support the household. You know we can't afford to send you to college, right? Of course, my parents were completely against the idea. If I can't get into a state college, I'll give up. I can cover the tuition if I go to a state school. Please, let me try. I begged until they finally gave in, but life only got harder after I got in. Not only did my parents refuse to pay for my tuition, but they also started demanding that I help with household expenses, even though they knew that I was using my part-time job income to pay for school. You decided to go to Amanda, right? Our family is not financially stable, so helping each other is what family does. If it's too hard, maybe you should just drop out of college. I was told this. After that, I worked part-time, sacrificing my sleep, and somehow managed to graduate from college. That's why I don't have a single happy memory from my college days. It was all about part-time jobs, housework, and studying. I was too busy to make any friends, and my college life was far from enjoyable. Not being loved by my family, and not even having friends, I thought I would spend my life without being needed by anyone. With that fear lingering in my heart, I started my first job and met the first person who ever said they liked me. It was Nicholas, who was 2 years older and trained me at work. After about 2 years of dating, I got married at 26. Although my parents were strongly against it, I managed to convince them, and now I live with Nicholas, who is my husband. It's been 2 years since we got married. I've tried to keep my distance from my family, but today I decided to visit my parents for the first time in a while. Today is Kevin's 20th birthday, a special milestone. I rang the doorbell, holding a birthday cake and a present. "Who is it?" Kevin acted like he didn't know who I was, playing around. "Stop joking and open the door." I brought a cake and a present. After a while, Kevin burst through the front door and snatched the cake box from my hands. Then, as I let out a small gasp of surprise, he threw the entire box at me. I'm too scared to eat food from a stranger. The cake smashed against me, completely ruined. My parents, who were standing behind Kevin, burst into laughter, holding their stomachs as they watched me, covered in the destroyed cake. A stranger. I stood there, shocked by what had just happened. My parents, still laughing so hard they could hardly breathe, said, "Well, your last name is different now. Someone with a different last name isn't family anymore." Just like Kevin, they treated me like a stranger. I never expected that simply changing my last name after getting married would mean I was no longer considered part of the family. "So am I no longer family?" I asked, and for a moment, my parents gave me a puzzled look, but then they laughed and mocked me. "You were always more like a maid, Amanda. I wanted a boy from the start. It's your fault for being born a girl." A cold sensation swept through me, something I couldn't quite put into words. I think this was the moment when the last bit of feeling I had left for my family disappeared. The parents I'd once feared so much suddenly seemed ridiculous and pathetic. A woman who gets married and leaves the house is a stranger now. Kevin, who just called me a stranger, snatched the present I brought and said what suited him. "I'll take this, though." Adding to Kevin's words, my mother said, "The celebration is just for family, so the stranger should leave." She shooed me away like I was an animal. So I'm really just a stranger now. When I asked again, my father this time, "Who are you? I don't understand what you're saying." He shrugged his shoulders, acting like he didn't care. For 20 years since Kevin was born, I don't know why I kept looking for approval from such unreasonable parents. I could have left at any time, but I was trapped, bound to that house, and now I feel ashamed of myself. I may not have received professional treatment, but I might have been under some kind of brainwashing. I decided to comply with my parents' and Kevin's wishes. Well then, from now on, we are strangers. As the three of them celebrated with high fives, thinking I had accepted the severing of ties, I continued speaking. And by the way, the financial support will stop, so prepare for that. I gave a cold and formal farewell, turning my back on them. They hurled insults and mocked me from behind, but I didn't turn around. What financial support? You've never sent anything. Stop lying. A woman in her 20s can't afford to send money home. What a pathetic, desperate lie. Liar. That's why Mom and Dad never loved you. When they realized I wouldn't turn around, they kept going. Stupid woman. You're too scared to turn back. Huh? How embarrassing. Don't ever come back. They continued hurling childish insults until I was out of sight, around the corner. But honestly, I felt relieved. For so long, I had craved their love. But now I couldn't understand why I ever wanted love from a family like that. Now I have Nicholas, who waits for me at home. He praises me every day, even when I struggle with self-worth. And he loves me unconditionally. I quickly washed off the cake stains on my clothes at a park faucet and hurried home. When Nicholas saw me dirty, he was surprised but gave me a gentle smile. He didn't ask any questions, just softly encouraged me to take a shower. I was reminded once again of his kindness, his way of not pressing me for answers until I was ready to talk. A month later, despite having cut me off and claimed we were strangers, my parents and Kevin showed up at our house. What is going on? Explain this to us right now. My mother's high-pitched voice echoed through the hall. I heard them banging violently on the door. Nicholas had told me not to get involved with them anymore, so I ignored them for a while, but they weren't giving up. Reluctantly, I opened the front door. Amanda must have done something. What are you talking about? I honestly had no idea what they were accusing me of. After all, they were shouting without explaining anything. My university tuition payment was declined. Kevin attends a well-known private university. Although it's a private school, the program he's in is considered one of the easier ones to get into. Unlike me, he never had to work part-time or help out, and he even went to a tutoring school, yet that's all he could manage. And how does that have anything to do with me? I maintained my distant, indifferent tone. Well, the university fees were withdrawn from a bank account under my father's name, meant for living expenses. My parents managed the account, and I didn't even know the PIN, so there was no way I could have interfered. But I had a pretty good idea why the payment had failed. Before I got married, I used to put $500 into that account every month. That didn't include food expenses. Amanda's the one who cooks, so it's only fair she pays for the groceries. They used to say, making me cover the cost of food for the four of us out of my own pocket. In reality, I was probably paying close to $1,000. When I announced I was getting married, I promised my parents I would continue sending a $500 every month as financial support in exchange for their blessing on my marriage. Even so, my parents said, "Who's going to do the housework then? You expect me to work and take care of the house at the same time. Do you want me to collapse from exhaustion? How could you be such a terrible daughter?" They refused to let me get married until I agreed to send them double the amount of money every month. It took that condition for them to finally give their blessing for my marriage. Apparently, they had completely forgotten about this, but we've been living the same way as always. So how is it possible that we're running out of money? My parents, plain dumb, seemed oblivious to reality, so I decided to set them straight. Maybe it's because the money from your estranged daughter's support has stopped. What? Both of my parents and Kevin looked completely shocked and started panicking. Wasn't Joseph working a side job to make up for the difference? Of course not. You know our company has a strict no side job policy. I thought Kevin was working a part-time job to help with the expenses. Didn't you both tell me not to bother with a part-time job? That it was beneath me. It seemed my mother thought my support was part of my father's income, while my father believed Kevin was earning from a part-time job. They exchanged confused looks, then all three of them turned to me with forced smiles. The family smiles I had once longed to see now felt strange, even unsettling, given our estranged relationship. Amanda, you went to a state university, unlike Kevin, so you must be doing well for yourself. Way to go. That's my daughter. All the tough love paid off. Amanda, you really turned out great, didn't you? Suddenly, my parents changed their tone, trying to win me over. It's amazing how they could say such things without even knowing where I worked. I've been working at a major pharmaceutical company, which was my dream since I was in elementary school. A science competition project back in elementary school sparked my ambition to work in this field. I came up with a way to make it easier for children to take medicine, inspired by Kevin's struggles with swallowing pills. Even though I didn't win any awards, I received a special comment, praising my creative ideas and my obvious love for my family. Now, thanks to that motivation, I earn over $70K a year, so sending $1K a month wasn't an issue at all. As I stood at the front door, talking to my parents and Kevin, Nicholas had been listening from inside, and suddenly flung the door open. My parents and Kevin froze in surprise. Enough is enough. Amanda is not some tool for your convenience. Nicholas's voice was filled with anger, causing my parents to recoil for a moment. Then my father yelled, followed quickly by my mother. How dare you speak to your in-laws like that? Exactly. This is beyond disrespectful. Kevin, standing behind them, nodded in agreement. You were the ones who cut ties with Amanda, calling her an outsider. Now you want to treat her like your personal bank. We're done here. Get out. Intimidated by Nicholas's outburst, my parents left. My tuition. Kevin, however, seemed fixated on his tuition fees and kept pestering us. Do you still need something? Nicholas's imposing tone made Kevin squeak in fear before he hurriedly left as well. But neither I nor my husband thought for a second that this was the end. As expected, the very next day, they started showing up at our house again and calling repeatedly. I ignored them, but Kevin eventually began waiting outside for me. Whenever I saw him near the front door, I would sneak in through the back or hang out at a cafe until he left. But today, before I even realized it, Kevin had already noticed me, and I couldn't avoid him. Kevin came trotting toward me. I had already made up my mind to completely ignore whatever he said, but the words that came out of his mouth were so unexpected that I stopped in my tracks. I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong. Kevin, who had always treated me like a stranger and insisted he wasn't at fault, was now apologizing. Dad and Mom told me that you were a failure, so I misunderstood. I'm really sorry. I felt a shiver run down my spine, disgusted by the words. So, can you help with just the tuition? I never thought he was truly sorry, but to blatantly beg for financial support was just too much. I ignored Kevin and hurried home. Kevin, however, shouted insults at me from behind. I'm apologizing here, and you're really not gonna forgive me? You're such a heartless sister. His voice was loud enough to echo through the neighborhood. He probably thought I'd be embarrassed and react, but I kept walking, ignoring him. "Oh, so you're just gonna ignore me now? Acting all high and mighty. Well, I'll destroy your house then." Upset that I was ignoring him, Kevin started making threats. "You better watch out on your way back from work. Some of my friends are pretty rough. Are you even listening to me?" When I closed the front door, Kevin pounded on it violently. To be honest, I was really scared. Even though he's younger, Kevin is now a grown man. There's no way I could match his strength, and the fear of him actually resorting to violence made me tremble. But Kevin's yelling soon drew the attention of the police. Thanks to his shouting being loud enough for the neighbors to hear, someone had called the cops. When the police arrived, they also asked me what was going on, and the situation turned into quite the commotion. Neighbors came out, worried about what was happening. Kevin was taken to the station, but since he hadn't actually gotten violent and it was deemed a family matter, no charges were pressed. Even though his threats were real, they chalked it up to just a sibling argument. My parents, who had gone to the station to pick Kevin up, came straight to my house and caused even more of a scene. "How could you call the police on your own brother? What kind of sister does that? Don't you care about Kevin? How could you treat a young man with a bright future so terribly? You're a horrible sister." Like Kevin, my parents were shouting loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. I thought they might get reported again, but before that could happen, the patrolling police officers came by and warned them, and I saw them leave through the window. After my parents left, the officers told me they'd be increasing patrols in the area. They said they couldn't officially intervene in family disputes, but one of the officers gave me a sympathetic smile, saying it was better to be cautious before something really happened. It was comforting to know they were looking out for me, but I also knew I couldn't rely on them forever. There was always the chance Kevin and my parents could show up when the officers weren't around. I needed to figure out a solution quickly, and sure enough, my parents and Kevin kept showing up every day, demanding money for living expenses and tuition. Even when I ignored them, they made a scene at the door, and the police had to come by to warn them again and again. At first, the neighbors seemed concerned, but as it kept happening, they began to look more and more annoyed. My husband and I apologized to the neighbors countless times, letting them know we were planning to move. People would occasionally ask us where we were moving to, but I always made sure to avoid giving a direct answer. I was worried that if my parents or Kevin found out our new location, they might somehow cause trouble, and I couldn't bear the thought of that. The neighbors would smile sympathetically, acknowledging that it was probably for the best. So when we moved, we didn't tell anyone, neither my parents, Kevin, nor even the neighbors, where we were going. One day, I ran into an old neighbor, and they told me that after we had moved, my parents and Kevin had visited the empty house multiple times. Even when the neighbors explained that we had moved, my parents wouldn't believe them, insisting that they were lying to protect me. Apparently, this had escalated to the point where the new tenants had gotten involved in a dispute, which eventually ended with a settlement payment. Since then, the neighbors hadn't seen them around, but they warned me to stay cautious. Just as the neighbor had predicted, my parents and Kevin eventually showed up at Nicholas's parents' house. "Where did Amanda move to?" "It's her fault we had to move to that old apartment. Because of Amanda, our lives have been ruined. Tell us where she is." It was a horribly unfair situation for Nicholas's parents. Before we got married, I had explained to them all about my family, how they treated me, and the kinds of trouble they might cause. Even though Nicholas said he would marry me no matter what his parents thought, I was convinced that if they didn't accept me, we couldn't go through with the marriage. I had mentally prepared myself for them to oppose the wedding. However, when I opened up to Nicholas's mother, Kelly, with tears in her eyes, she embraced me and said, "You've been through so much, but now you're marrying Nicholas, and I will be your mother. You're safe now." I couldn't hold back my tears. One of the reasons I was able to withstand being treated like an outsider by my own family was because of how much Nicholas's family had embraced and cared for me. Fully understanding my situation, they had accepted me as Nicholas's wife, and Kelly and Stephen firmly refused to give my parents any information. We would never share such personal details with anyone, especially not a stranger, they said. But my parents and Kevin wouldn't give up. "Give Amanda back. You can't just keep all the benefits of having her to yourselves. It's disgusting that you're using Amanda's income. Your son must be just as awful, marrying her for her money." Stephen, who was usually so calm and gentle, finally snapped at their relentless accusations. "Enough. Amanda is our daughter now. You're the ones who disowned her, so don't act like you have any claim to her." My parents fell silent, stunned by Stephen's sudden outburst. "And for the record, it's you who have been relying on Amanda's income all these years. We've never once taken a penny from her." My mother, trying to save face, made excuses, claiming that her reckless spending was due to the stress of their financial decline after I stopped sending them money. "That's your own responsibility. You're the ones who said she was no longer your daughter, so leave us alone." Kelly stepped in, urging them to go. That's when Kevin, looking desperate, blurted out that they should at least help him out until he finished college. But Nicholas's parents, who knew that I had graduated from college without any help, gave him a cold stare. "Amanda worked her way through college on her own. If you're the great heir to your family, surely you can manage the same thing without needing anyone's help." Kevin's face flushed bright red at the cutting remark. Even though my parents and Kevin said they wouldn't leave until they got an answer from me, it wasn't until my in-laws threatened to call the police that they finally left. I'm truly grateful to my in-laws. Afterward, perhaps due to the stress of financial hardship, my parents' relationship with Kevin completely fell apart. My father, already a heavy smoker, started smoking even more, spending recklessly, and eventually developed a lung disease. My mother, meanwhile, turned to alcohol and became dependent, which led to high blood pressure and liver problems. Even as their medical bills mounted, Kevin refused to help and instead criticized them daily, asking how they were going to afford his college tuition. The constant fights between my parents and Kevin became unbearable, and one day, my father threw both my mother and Kevin out of the house. Kevin apparently tried to follow my mother back to her family home. A son who doesn't even care about his own mother's illness isn't someone I'm going to take care of. But she rejected him, saying so. Eventually, Kevin ended up staying with my father. You might wonder how I know all this, despite having cut ties with them. It's because they've all taken turns showing up at my in-laws' house, asking for help. Each of the three blames the other two, trying to defend themselves, and asking my in-laws to pass their pleas for help to me. Every time, my in-laws have politely but firmly turned them away. While I couldn't just keep relying on my in-laws to deal with this, I started thinking about how to handle the situation. But before I could come up with a solution, my parents and Kevin all showed up together at my in-laws' house, causing a huge commotion. Standing on the doorstep, they started sobbing loudly, trying to guilt me into taking them back. It was obvious they were trying to make the neighbors feel sorry for them, like, how could she not forgive them when they're apologizing so desperately? I think they learned from the time the police were called at our old house before my husband and I moved. You'd think they would learn the right lesson by now, but instead they seemed to decide that crying and begging would work better this time than making a scene. Why didn't they realize they should stop bothering people altogether? I couldn't understand it. Enough already. I couldn't take their fake tears anymore, and I shouted at them as they sat on the doorstep. In fact, the place we had moved to was my in-laws' house. The reason I knew that my parents and Kevin had been coming over and bothering them was because I had seen it happen myself. Amanda, were you being held captive by these people? My father grabbed my shoulder and spouted something completely absurd. We were worried when we couldn't reach you. Following my father's lead, my mother tried to put her arms around me, but it was obvious that they thought if they acted caring, I'd fall back into line, just like before. I shrugged off their hands. I have a loving husband and kind in-laws. I don't need your concern anymore. It wasn't a literal shove. It was more like I was declaring my independence. After all, I needed to remind myself that I wasn't the same girl who had been treated like a maid and exploited since childhood. What's wrong with you? Have you been brainwashed? My father tightened his grip on my shoulder and asked, "Did they treat you badly?" My mother reached out for me with a worried expression. "Come home with us. Let's all live together again as a family of 4. Kevin flashed a smile, trying to sound like the nice guy, but the way they made it sound like I had been mistreated by my in-laws pushed me to the brink of losing my temper. Yeah, I was treated terribly, and maybe I was brainwashed too. Then, she was probably about to say, "Come back home," but I cut my mother off. "By you guys." I deliberately raised my voice, listing all the awful things my family had done to me, one by one. My mother panicked and tried to stop me, while Kevin nervously glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. And then my father. "That's enough." He raised his hand, looking ready to strike. At that moment, a loud whistle sounded. The police Nicholas had called arrived on the scene. My parents and Kevin tried to downplay it, claiming it was just a family quarrel. "I'm sorry, I was too hard on you," my mother pleaded. "I shouldn't have ignored you, sis. We're family, right?" Kevin added, appealing to our blood ties. But I knew all too well that in their minds, my parents and Kevin only cared about money, and their apologies were nothing but a performance. Before I met Nicholas, I probably would have accepted their apologies without a second thought. But now, after experiencing real love from Nicholas and his parents, I knew what love was supposed to feel like. And this wasn't it. You guys were the ones who threw the cake at me and treated me like a stranger. Remember, it was Kevin who threw the cake, right? Kevin, who doesn't even care about our parents' illness, my father snapped, suddenly throwing Kevin, once his beloved golden child, under the bus. That triggered Kevin's outrage. "What? You're the ones who told me to kick her out." "I never said that." The 3 of them started fighting among themselves, as if this kind of chaotic scene was completely normal for them, even though the police were standing right there. The officers rushed in to stop them, but in the commotion, one of my parents accidentally hit a policeman on the cheek. At first, the police had been reluctant to intervene in what they saw as a family dispute, but now they couldn't just stand by. It was an accident, so it didn't count as obstructing justice, but the police couldn't simply ignore it either. As the officers were scolding my parents and Kevin, one of them received a message over the radio. With a deep sigh, the officer asked my parents and Kevin to voluntarily come down to the station. It seemed that a neighbor, who I'd already talked to about the situation, had called the police and reported hearing loud shouting and threats. Even though it was accidental, my parents and Kevin, guilty of striking an officer, compiled without resistance and were taken away in a police car. As they were being led into the car, my husband, my in-laws, and I have already decided to move away from here. So there's no point in coming back. I called out after them. My parents and Kevin frantically tried to cling to me, but the police officers quickly escorted them into the patrol car. The only reason I even showed myself to them was because we had decided to move, as Nicholas had been transferred, and the whole family was going to relocate. It's all okay now. Kelly gave me a reassuring pat on the back. My stomach was in knots. Nicholas sighed in frustration. He had been completely against me facing my parents and Kevin, but when I told him it was my final way of breaking free, he finally understood and supported me. Stephen nodded and simply smiled at me. I realized just how lucky I was to be surrounded by such a loving family. As for my parents and Kevin, who had been taken away by the police, they only received a strict warning, but their lives now are so miserable that maybe prison would have been a relief. My parents had to quit their jobs because of their health problems, and they can't afford the proper treatment. Kevin ignored his student loan bills, and after breaking his agreement for an extension, the university also found out he tried to force my parents and me into paying through intimidation and violence. As a result, he was expelled immediately. Having been evicted from my father's house, Kevin had no place to go. He found a job at a company far away that provided accommodation, and it paid well. But he quickly became addicted to gambling, blowing nearly all his income on it. As for my husband and myself, we've settled into our new home, balancing our careers while enjoying a happy life together. My in-laws lived close by, and we all had a comfortable distance that worked for everyone. But then the idea of moving in together came up. It seemed like the best choice to prioritize both family and career. The multi-generational home we're building together with my in-laws will be ready in about a year. I hope the 5 of us can live happily together after that.
There's no job for someone with such low education. What can a person without any real learning do? My boss said this while laughing, mocking me, a woman who grew up in a single-parent household. I had been working hard all this time for my mom, who raised me single-handedly. He never recognized my efforts and even belittled my mom. Even worse, when my mom passed away, my boss not only spoke cold words but also, "I'm Sarah, a 28-year-old woman working in a small to medium-sized business. Raised in a single-parent household, I joined the company right after high school as a part-timer and am now working as a full-time employee. The company I work for is of considerable size despite being a small to medium-sized enterprise, with a significant number of employees. Initially, I started working part-time but have fought hard, almost as if my life depended on it. Thanks to that effort, I was recognized by my boss, and I managed to become a full-time employee in my 3rd year. After becoming a full-time employee, I continued to work hard, just like when I was part-time, not wanting to disappoint those who believed in me. By the time I was 25, I was given more responsible tasks compared to my peers of the same age, and I was gaining trust from the company. I was also receiving decent pay and bonuses, allowing me to take care of my mom and live a cherished life. Then, one day, my direct boss was due to retire, and a new boss was to be assigned. It was very sad not to be able to work with the boss who had recognized me and nurtured me, and I had some slight anxiety about getting along with the new boss. But I was achieving results at work, and everyone in the company was kind. Above all, the retiring boss told me he would speak to the new boss about me, so I didn't worry too much. Then, the day of the new boss's first day came after my old boss retired. That day, I was called by the new boss, Christopher. I thought he wanted to talk individually with the person who would become his subordinate, so I headed to the designated conference room. But there, I was thrown unbelievable words by Christopher. "Are you Taylor? The high school graduate from a single-parent household who went from part-time to full-time?
Certainly, the tailor they were referring to in the resume is me. But I was utterly shocked when they brought it up out of the blue. What on earth does this person want to talk about with me? Their attitude wasn't light or conversational, it was intimidating, like they were judging me. My first impression of this boss, who came at me with such a high-handed attitude, was the worst. But I knew we would be working together for a long time, and I didn't want it to affect our future work.
Yes, I am Taylor. I look forward to working with you.
I greeted the boss with a smile, trying to brush off their comment. I still didn't know what kind of person this Christopher was. I thought it best to handle the situation calmly, but Christopher continued to barrage me with unkind words.
A single-parent household upbringing, huh?
You probably can't work. You didn't even go to college. What can an uneducated person like you do? I was more than surprised by this statement, I was dumbfounded. It's true that I was raised in a single-parent household and only graduated from high school, but I am the one who has been performing well in this department. I admit I'm not highly educated, but I am producing results in my job.
I may only have a high school diploma, but I believe I'm achieving good results.
I explained to Christopher that I might have shortcomings, but I am still delivering results.
I noticed that, but it seems like your previous boss liked you quite a bit, right?
He looked crude and lecherous to me.
Perhaps you seduced him to get good results?
Christopher started saying something baseless, as if there's no way someone like me with only a high school education could do the job.
That's not true. My previous boss took a special interest in me, but he only guided me so that I could do my job properly.
Of course, there was no truth to what Christopher was saying, and I couldn't keep quiet after being insulted about my former boss who had nurtured me. I didn't understand why he could berate me, a complete stranger, so much, but it must have been his inherent personality. The thought of having to work with such a boss in the future weighed heavily on me. Christopher was smirking at me, and it became clear that he didn't like me at all. But if I could prove my worth in front of this boss, there would be no more room for complaints. From what I heard, this boss truly believes in meritocracy. I decided there was no other choice but to use that to my advantage and work even harder. Then, just as I was returning to the office from fieldwork, it happened.
Hey! Where have you been?
No sooner had I returned to the office than Christopher started yelling at me.
I was out on fieldwork.
I had noted on the schedule that I would be out on fieldwork today. Confused as to why I was being yelled at, Christopher deliberately came over to me.
You're no good at your job, so you might as well do the menial tasks. Organize these documents,
he said, handing over a massive stack of papers. It wasn't my job, and I didn't have the time to spare for it. But I couldn't defy the boss's orders, so I reluctantly began to organize the documents. Christopher looked at me with a satisfied expression as I quietly sorted the papers. Perhaps because I obeyed his command, he began piling daily chores on me from that day on. Whenever I tried to do my job, I was accused of being a payroll thief for not doing the assigned work, or yelled at for hours over minor mistakes. He even insulted me, saying, "You can't work because you come from a single-parent household." Until now, I found satisfaction in my work by producing results and being recognized by the company. I was earning enough, providing for Mom, and living without complaints. But now, I feel stress every single day. I have to live, and quitting my job now would worry Mom. I wanted to avoid that at all costs, so I desperately continued to work. One day, Mom came to me with a request. She wanted to find part-time work. Even though I was paying for living expenses and supporting her, she apparently didn't plan on being taken care of forever. She was considering when I might get married and wanted to save some money for herself. I couldn't afford to refuse it either, so I decided to talk to the company. Fortunately, they were hiring an office worker at the time, so it was a perfect fit. It had nothing to do with my department, so I shouldn't have to deal with that horrible boss. After consulting, I was immediately interviewed, and Mom was successfully hired. And so, Mom started working as an office worker at the same company where I work. Mom was happy with the comfortable workplace, saying that going to work every day was enjoyable. But a week after Mom started working, I was called by Christopher.
Your mom got hired as an office worker? That short woman? Is she the one who raised you as an uneducated idiot?
Christopher always looks at me with a nasty expression, making fun of Mom too. I didn't know why he knew about Mom, who had taken an office job without speaking to him, but my stress more than doubled. It was more unbearable to have Mom spoken ill of than myself. Above all, I was worried and restless, wondering if Christopher would say something directly to Mom. I didn't want to make Mom feel bad. However, contrary to my worries, everything seemed to be going smoothly with Mom. As I had feared, Christopher occasionally came to make snide comments, but Mom is a strong woman who raised me all by herself. It seems that such things don't bother her at all.
It's like a child's insult.
Mom laughed. I was relieved by Mom's strength, as she didn't seem to care about Christopher at all. Even after that, Mom didn't pay any attention to Christopher and enjoyed working in her new environment. Then one day, something happened. Mom collapsed and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Fortunately, her life was not in danger, but she had to be hospitalized for a while. Because of the sudden incident, I decided to take some time off from work to take care of Mom. However, when I told Christopher about it, he had an outrageous reaction.
Huh? You plan to take time off for something so trivial? You must be taking your job lightly.
Christopher, with an exaggerated sigh, made it clear that he would not allow any time off.
I'll use the paid leave that I haven't used yet. After all, I'm the only one there for Mom.
Permission for this leave had already been obtained from someone higher up than Christopher. They were more than willing to grant me the time off, especially since I had seldom taken any before. But no matter how I explained it, Christopher would not be convinced.
It's not about that. Just leave an old woman whose life is short anyway.
I was thrown a thoughtless comment, and I could feel my blood rushing to my head. Why would he say something like that when I'm telling him Mom has collapsed? I've endured everything he said until now, but I finally reached my breaking point. I can't work under such a person anymore. Once I thought that, I couldn't hold myself back. I knew it might be a hassle for others, but since Christopher came, all I was assigned was menial tasks. Having lost all motivation and given up, I immediately told Christopher that I was quitting. His reaction was one of surprise, as he said,
"You don't have to go that far,"
trying to stop me. He must have been afraid it would become an issue that he caused me to quit. But, of course, my feelings didn't change. I had enough savings, and I could live on that for a while. Ignoring Christopher, I quit my job on the spot and devoted myself to taking care of Mom. Eventually, things settled down with Mom's care, and I decided to re-enter the workforce. I thought about doing the same kind of work as before, but I, having been successful and confident in my abilities, chose otherwise. Having learned a lot about business management from my retired former boss, I took the plunge and decided to start my own company. I wanted to tell Mom after things had settled down, so I struck out on my own. About a year passed, and the company was beginning to stabilize. Suddenly, Mom's condition worsened, and she had to be hospitalized again. I was caught between taking care of Mom and running my business, but I managed to handle both without taking any time for myself. Thanks to that effort, another year went by, and the company was on a solid track, reassuring me of its stability. Although Mom's condition hadn't improved, I wanted to ease her mind, so I was thinking about telling her soon. But then, Mom passed away. It was a truly sudden event, and it didn't feel real. But the sad truth was that Mom had undeniably passed away. Being an only child, I had no other family, so I had to prepare to say goodbye to Mom without time to grieve. Holding back tears, I proceeded with various arrangements. Although I hadn't worked as a clerk for very long, many people who had been friendly with Mom at the company where I worked were willing to attend her funeral. Maybe it was because of Mom's personality, but they wanted to be there. And on the day of the funeral, more people attended than I had expected. It must have been due to Mom's popularity. Despite the pain of losing Mom, I was filled with pride knowing that so many people had come out for her. However, just as the funeral was about to end, the sight of one particular attendee caught my eye.
Long time no see. So that old woman finally kicked the bucket, huh?
I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the infuriating figure of Christopher standing there. Though he may have had some interaction with Mom, I had no recollection of inviting this man to the funeral. No matter what, I would never invite someone like him to Mom's funeral. My old boss was smirking at my stunned expression. The very same face he made when he belittled our single-parent household. Those unpleasant memories came flooding back. I could do nothing but glare at Christopher's face. Christopher approached me, handing me a bunch of flowers.
Here, some flowers. She might have been the sort of woman who couldn't provide her daughter with a proper education, but at least I can do this much.
How could he act like this at someone's funeral? I almost yelled out loud in anger, but I clenched my emotions. I didn't want to ruin Mom's funeral or inconvenience the other mourners. I accepted the flowers in silence. But, unbelievably, the flowers looked like something he had picked up off the street. Had this man come all this way just to pull off such a nasty trick? As Christopher saw my face, he grinned even more maliciously. That moment, my suppressed emotions came out. I couldn't stay silent after having my precious Mom ridiculed so much.
This is how you feel about me, then? I understand. In that case, I'll have to call off our business deal with your company.
Christopher stared blankly at me as I said this.
Huh? Deal? What are you talking about?
My foolish former boss looked clueless, not understanding what I meant. So I explained to him, politely, the meaning behind the words I had just uttered.
So this is a matter of business with my company. I've been asked by my colleagues and seniors in the sales department to sign quite a lot of contracts, but I want to terminate all of those contracts. I want to rethink our relationship with a company that has someone like you,
I declared. At first, my former boss didn't believe me, but the next day he sent a written notice to Christopher's company. Christopher, upon seeing it, looked quite pale. He never expected that I had started a business and succeeded, so he came to apologize immediately with the president.
I'm sorry,
Christopher said, his attitude hardly apologetic. My anger did not subside.
You're sorry? You think that's enough? Insulting my mom while she was alive, only giving me menial tasks, and what about the funeral? You think everything until now can be made right with such a shallow apology?
As I continued to speak, Christopher looked at a loss for words. Beside him, the president, who had come along, apologized deeply.
I'm so sorry for not noticing,
he said, tears welling in his eyes. I had been greatly helped by the president, so I felt terrible. In the end, out of respect for the president, I decided to continue the business relationship. Hearing me and the president talk, Christopher wore a relieved expression.
Oh, what a relief! Let the bygones be bygones, and move forward together.
he said, offering a ridiculous smile and extending his hand for a handshake. He must have thought we had reconciled. But it wasn't such an easy situation.
"You're fired, Christopher,"
the president announced right in front of me.
"What, fired? Why?" "I got forgiveness, and we're continuing the deal."
Christopher protested to the president, looking disbelieving. The president had decided to fire Christopher, knowing I would not be satisfied continuing the business relationship this way.
"I only decided to continue the deal out of respect for the president. I never intended to forgive you. I will never forgive you no matter what you say,"
I said, as if delivering the final blow. Christopher fell completely silent.
"It's the result of your own words and actions."
President spoke as if tossing his words aside and then left, dragging a completely dejected Christopher with him. The next day, it seems that my former boss really was fired from the company. Afterward, I received a resentful call from Christopher. He lamented losing his position and the fact that finding a new job at his age would be difficult.
"You've ruined my life. Take responsibility for what's happened,"
he yelled over the phone. I made a proposal to the furious Christopher.
"How about I hire you at my company? I can't pay you much, but it seems like you're out of a job because of me."
When I said that, taking responsibility as he demanded, he suddenly exploded with emotion and hung up. Being employed by someone he had ridiculed must have been a complete humiliation. I knew he probably wouldn't accept this offer. But a month later, apparently unable to find another job, Christopher asked me to hire him, abandoning all his pride. Honestly, I was surprised, but I decided to hire Christopher. Then, I made him experience the same humiliation I had endured as an employee.
"Hey! Why do I have to do these menial tasks? Anyone could do this."
Now that our positions were reversed, Christopher began to complain. But I kept him on menial tasks, giving him no responsible work.
"At your age, to be fired for incompetence? I can't imagine you'd be able to handle real work. Besides, the boss's orders are absolute, so you can't defy them, please,"
I said coldly. Christopher looked downcast. He looked entirely different from the arrogant person he was at his previous workplace, and his appearance was extremely shameful. Soon after, Christopher quit the company. He probably couldn't endure the humiliating treatment from me, but it was all something he had done to me. Doing to others what you hate being done to yourself is just nonsensical. Not understanding such a simple thing eventually leads to a difficult situation where everything is lost. By the way, my company is still growing steadily and doing reasonably well. Persistent effort will surely bring results, and without it, only modest success will follow. Whether you end up like Christopher or not is truly up to you, I believe.